My fellow Americans, let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis II. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. Yes, it is Talk Breakfast. It's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Carl. A curious Monday morning where the world turns upside down for the umpteenth time this year. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? We'll give you more details throughout the course of the programme. Also this morning, Nigel Farage is talking about a national inquiry into immigration. He's specifically aiming this at Boris Johnson and his wave of immigration from 2019. He says the Boris wave will cost every British family £20,000. Do we need a national inquiry into immigration? We'll have more on that too. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is accused of another Brexit betrayal. He's got a PhD in this stuff. Here's the thing. Once the UK has struck a full-on trade deal with the EU, any additional changes to the law in this respect will not need to be voted on by MPs. The government can just rubber stamp it, give it the big fat green light, and away they go. Did Mr Starmer not see the memo from 2016? The UK voted to leave the EU, not to be subservient to its rules. Over in Hungary, the new Prime Minister is about to enter power. His name is Peter Magyar. He'll be taking over from Viktor Orban, who's been booted out after 16 years. The new kid on the block is more pro-EU, but it's still a centre-right government. And fish and chips are set to be banned from school dinners. This is a national outcry because it's our national dish and, frankly, part of your five a day. Pray for the children. We'll have details to come. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk Breakfast. It's 0344 499 1000. And fortunately, just by a weird coincidence, Matt Vickers, who's the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, just happened to walk in this morning. And we said, Matt, come and join us for a whole hour. He said, yes, fine. How you doing?
All good, all good. Deeply concerned about this fish and chip story. Devastating news for the country. Devastating news.
We were only talking about fish and chips last week because they've gone up ridiculously in price.
Good Friday,
yeah.
Nice.
I'm the grandson of a Grimsby docker, so, you know, it's in the blood somewhat, fish. And my first job while I was at school was working in a chippy.
It's fish and chips today. It'll be sausage rolls tomorrow. It's devastating. You know what? Kids need to learn everything in moderation.
Absolutely. I mean, they can talk about carrots and broccoli as much as they like, but a bit of battered old fish, frankly, is the thing to get you out of bed in the morning. We'll come back to that story, Matt, but let's start with what is going on in Iran. The Strait of Hormuz. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. I thought the whole point was to get this thing open. That was the whole, you know, the Iran are blockading it, they're causing trouble, they're making missions, they're going to charge vessels to go through it. Now we've got to this stage. J.D. Vance went over there. Let's be honest, his heart's not really in this one, but he said we couldn't get a deal, but Trump has now concluded, as a result of J.D. Vance going over there, that because we haven't got a conclusion, we're going to now close it. So nothing goes in, nothing goes out. What is... I probably missed something here. What is the point of that?
Well, I think so. The big concern from the negotiations, the one thing, do you know what? There's the rights and wrongs of this Iran situation, how involved we should or shouldn't be. But the one thing I think nobody doubts is that regime are not very friendly. They've undertaken terrorist attacks on our own turf. They've butchered their own people. And the one thing we know, no ifs, no buts, those people cannot be allowed to get hold of nuclear weapons. And that seems to have been the sticking point in these negotiations. I think The other thing, when you look through the coverage in the newspapers, it's largely about the division between the UK and the US. The fact that half of the coverage is taken up by that is a very scary thing, not only because it undermines that special relationship that we've relied on for security, for defence, for intelligence, for trade, for generations, but because what sort of message does that send to people like Putin, to people like China, that we can't get our act together, we can't work with our closest ally to look after our national interests? Scary times.
First, it was the Churchill comparison. There was none, according to Donald Trump. Now he's gone Chamberlain on this one, so he's pulling them all out the bag, and it's always very amusing to watch. Let's just have a listen to the American president. This is him speaking on that blockade of Hormuz. Here he is.
I would say it's holding well. Their military is destroyed. Their whole Navy is underwater. You know that. 158 ships are gone. Their Navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil. And that will be very effective. But what we want to do is we want to, and again, we don't need this. What we notice and what we see and what I think is maybe my idea, maybe not, I don't know. But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait.
So, I mean, is this just a crafty business deal? So the oil's not going to go through the Hormuz Strait, but it will be going to America. So you could buy it from America. There's a 2-for-1 going on over there in the States, it seems.
And meanwhile, in the UK, we're still refusing to drill in the North Sea. You know, we're actually subjecting ourselves to the worst of this debate. Global shocks, global price rises. We're refusing to drill our own stuff. The end result is we're importing it. We're creating more emissions by importing it. It's worse for the environment. We're putting people's jobs at risk. There's 200,000 jobs reliant upon that North Sea oil and gas. We're putting it all at risk because of some ideological nuttery that Starmer's picked up from Dale Vance. We're driving up our own costs, and now he's about to increase fuel duty for the first time in 15 or 16 years. Absolute act of national self-harm. People out there picking up the price. Devastating.
What I don't get about this, you know, a lot of headlines out there. You know, Ed Miliband, he's kind of toing and froing. He's discombobulating by the hour over this idea. You know, do we allow drilling here? I mean, let's be honest. It's not Ed Miliband. It's Keir Starmer's decision, right? I mean, Keir Starmer can just completely overrule that and go, no, we're going to go out there tomorrow, and this oil will be into domestic homes within 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, well, the winter's coming. This thing is going to get worse. It's going to get worse for businesses out there. It's going to get worse for families. Businesses who are already struggling to make ends meet are going to have to pay out yet more in fuel. They could make the decision tomorrow. We could start drilling. We could have the access to that by the winter. It's just the right thing to do. This is literally an act of national self-harm. To subject people across this country to these price rises unnecessarily is ridiculous.
So in terms of, just to reconnect this back to Iran again, Keir Starmer's being accused of, you know, being late to the party for a second time, saying we're not going to go in and help with this blockade, but we will send in minesweepers afterwards to, you know, check that the water is clear. Trump has again said, you know, we don't want you afterwards, we need you now. So who's right and who's wrong on that one?
Well, I think when you look at the entire relationship is so badly fractured. This must be the worst it's ever been, that special relationship. And when you look back, Trump is a guy who has quite a lot of admiration for the United Kingdom generally. We didn't have these issues last time. We now got Starmer in there, flippy-flopping, dilly-dally delay, and the end result, failure to allow him to access our bases when this strike began. That relationship is just fracturing all over the show. We actually need to get somebody around the table with Donald Trump. The shared values that we have are really important to us. We need to reopen that discussion. We cannot have the Putins of the world, China, looking at us, battering each other on Twitter, on X, or whatever other platform it is he's using now. It's a really poor message we send to the world, and our strength is in our unity.
It's going to be interesting, this Strait of Hormuz thing, because now that it's officially closed, is that the deal? What is Trump waiting for then for it to open? Is that for Iran to say, OK, we definitely won't make any nuclear weapons? I don't think they can make any nuclear weapons, can they? It's all, I mean, he told us everything's been obliterated. The whole thing has been blown to smithereens. There's nothing, there's not even a laboratory, there's not an individual that exists who could make them. I
think Trump would argue his objective probably is around preventing Iran profiteering from the situation. That's kind of his overriding objective is these guys can't be allowed to make money from this situation that they're highly responsible for creating. I think that's sort of the overriding objective. But I think you need to get them to the table to accept that nuclear weapons are not an option. If we can't get to that situation, we probably need to keep applying the pressure.
But in the meantime, if you need some oil, we've got some in the States. Come and buy
I think that's where we're at.
We've got, well, as you said, Matt, we've got some here. We've got loads here. It's right under our feet. It's right on our doorstep.
And instead, we're importing it. Worse for the environment, worse for jobs, worse for prices, undermining our national security.
Yeah, strange times. Let's talk about Nigel Farage. He's sort of riding high still in the polls. I mean, as a Conservative, how often is that one discussed in Tory circles? Is this a daily thing? Do you all turn up at the House of Commons?
You could spend all day talking about it.
Look, we were the right-wing party, and now this Farage character's
You could spend all day talking about it. I'm sure Farage would want us to spend all day talking about it. I'm sure whenever a journalist speaks to me, they want me to spend all day talking about it. But we've now got this suggestion of an inquiry. Yeah. But this is the guy who said that reform would deliver an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. In January 2025, he promised if the government won't do it, reform will do it. They'll raise the money, they'll get those judges, they'll make it happen. We haven't seen it yet. And those are the most vulnerable people in the United Kingdom who are subject to some of the most horrific things. Yeah. He's let them down on that pledge. He might let other people down on this. The reality is dealing with the costs. He's found these figures. They're all depend on indefinite leave to remain and not getting tighter on that. Actually, the Conservative Party has a real offering on border security. It hasn't put a press release out every other day about it. It's gone away. It's done the thinking. It's got some of the greatest legal minds together to look at what we need to do in terms of the ECHR so that we can protect our veterans, we can protect our borders, and everything else that seems to stem from that ridicules our legal system. And we've come up with a real solution. Leave the ECHR, a legal cap on the number of people that come into the country, and actually a bit more of the same. Those who come should be detained and be deported. No ifs, no buts. If you break into the country, you should not be allowed to stay.
Just briefly on the grooming gangs, Mr Farage would say, well, yes, we did promise an inquiry if the government didn't go ahead with one, but now they are going ahead with one.
We still haven't seen an inquiry out of the government, have we? We still aren't where we should be with that. This went in January 2025, he pledged this. Where are we? We're in April 2026. Those people are only just getting the boundaries of what this review will look like. It should have happened long before now.
In terms of immigration, I mean, the Conservatives do have a problem here, don't they? Because when you say we'll deport people, the question is really, when do you deport people? Because there's a lot of people in hotels that will be deported, one could argue. But in the meantime, they could spend 5 years in the Four Seasons. I mean, that's not the spirit of deporting people who shouldn't be here.
So I would be the first person to tell you the last government got lots of things wrong on immigration, but there were some things that they got right. They got right bringing forward. We call it the Rwanda deal. Actually, what that was bringing into law. We brought into law a requirement that if you come into the country illegally without obeying the law, you break into this country, you could be detained and deported. We then had all the wranglings with the ECHR. We saw them fall before our eyes, taking forever. But the principle was right. If you break into the country and removed, that stops people getting in those boats. It worked, actually. We saw it with Albania. We had a deal with Albania whereby if you came in, you were sent back, and all of a sudden, one of the places from which a huge number of people were arriving, 96% less people started arriving virtually overnight. When that deal's put in place, when people know if they're breaking into the country, they're not going to be able to stay, they stop coming. It's the right thing to do.
Isn't the problem, Matt, as I see it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but so you come over on a boat from Calais, you are illegally about to enter a country. That is not the way you do it. You've got no passport, you've got no papers, you're pitching up on a rubber boat, you've done a 25-mile trip, and you're about to enter illegally. But the minute you get there, put your hand up and go, I'm claiming asylum, you are no longer illegal.
So what we'd put in legislation, had we not been a member of the ECHR, had we moved faster, had we had a little bit longer, we had said, no ifs, no buts, you've broken in, you're going home. And that should have been the way we were going to set up. We'd started setting up deals. We had them with Albania. We had them with
could have
others.
been there longer, couldn't you? You could have been there a bit longer, because Rishi could have.
We could have gone for another few months. I think there was lots of other challenges coming down the line.
Why did he go for July? I know this is old news now, isn't it? But it's still relevant. He went for an election in July, could have waited till November.
I think part of the problem that anybody who was inside, who was looking at that, was probably have told you that some of our MPs weren't exactly sticking together and getting behind there. There was a bit of fracturing. People were all over the place. Instead of getting on with the job, we're all fighting like cats in a sack. It was the wrong way to behave from parliamentarians. We've now got back. We've got a new leader. We've got a real offering. We're going to get on with the job, and the country needs us more now than ever, looking at the state of the economy.
But it's got to be. You said we're not putting out a press release every day. Farage and Reform do put out a press release almost every day on immigration of some description. It's front and centre, isn't it?
We're doing the thinking. We're going to do it properly. Because the one reason it failed last time is because the plan wasn't there. We weren't able to deliver it quickly enough. We're coming in with a real plan that we can plug in on day one. That legal cap on the number of people coming here, legally or illegally, a position whereby we will leave the ECHR and ensure that if you come into this country illegally, you're going home. No ifs, no buts.
Do we need a national inquiry into immigration? There's a question. 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note there as well. Matt Vickers is with us. We'll continue to get more comment from Matt on the big stories of the day. It's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on the Talk Breakfast Show. Back after this.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He's not the statesman that our country needs. He's failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door, and away we go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Good morning. Welcome. It's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle. Jeremy's off for a couple of weeks, but he's back after that. There's lots to get through this morning. We've got Matt Vickers, MP, with us. He is Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. Lots of comment, including that on fish and chips as well. Morning, Mark.
Morning, Ian. Mark from Chingford here. I know you was talking about fish and chips story, and jokingly you said, oh, they'll start on sausage rolls next. Well, they are starting on sausage rolls. They want to remove sausage rolls from the school canteens due to reasons of saying they're unhealthy. But I personally think it's just another small step into removing pork from the school menus. You know, there's certain demographics in this country that find pork offensive. You know, so I think it's just another small step into, you know, trying to get halal food into the kitchens, I should imagine. What will it be next?
What will they come for next? Sausage rolls, Matt. I mean, look, I've got big views on fish and chips, but the minute you start monkeying around with a sausage roll, frankly, I mean... life as we know it has ended, hasn't it?
Have you not seen Greggs have launched a chicken roll this weekend? It's
Have
all
they?
going on. Yeah. It's big news. Big news. I think everything is about. It's about education and exercise, isn't it? It is horrific when you see young people who are too young to make informed choices being fed things they shouldn't be fed, and as a result look in a hell of a state and unable to enjoy life in the way they should. But it's about educating people, giving them the choices that they need in life. It's about moderation. It's about exercise and getting these kids out from behind the PlayStation and teaching them a bit. And actually, I remember during the pandemic, I was involved in food bank type setup, supporting people who need access to food. And some families would turn up and you'd hand them a bag and it'd have all sorts of vegetables in, and you could have handed them rocks. We need to educate people, support them.
There was a look of surprise.
They just didn't know what they were going to do with some of the food that they were getting.
Wow.
That's just really sad, actually. It's how do you help people, educate people? I mean, I remember when I did food tech or whatever you call it now, what is it, domestic, whatever it is, cookery classes at school. And it was scones and it was Victoria sponges, but it was never actually how you cook proper food to live a healthy life and do it in an economic, financially sensible way. So I think,
it's interesting.
Education has a role.
I've got 10 years on you, Matt. So, and in that 10 years, there was a change where boys also did the cookery. Because when I was at school, boys did metalwork and woodwork, and girls did cookery and needlework. I'm not kidding you. This is in the 1980s. It's not like the 1850s.
Well, I'm sat here telling everybody they should, learn how to handle food, and I'm the worst possible person to do it. Because I am useless at it. But I do think there's something about education. There's something about giving youngsters the skills they need to be able to go out there and cook a meal that is healthy and sensible and financially sensible as well. You're not paying through the nose for it. But actually, to start closing off fish and chips as an option, it's just not a thing, is it? It's just not a thing.
Not really. The example of this, having said that, is my sister came home from needlework with a kind of doll, the sort of thing that would turn up in a slasher movie. It was like the most sinister thing you've ever seen in your life. It's like, look what I made, Mum. It's like, oh, get that thing out of here. That's just a weird bit of kit. No child should be bringing this thing home. I turn up with a wooden tray. Now, wasn't the best tray in the world. I mean, it could just about take the weight of an iced fancy on a good day, but it was a tray. I think it was probably still knocking around.
That is the question.
My sister's doll of death is no longer around.
All these things that you used to bring home and your parents used to welcome and say, oh, that was well done, that's brilliant. And then they disappeared overnight, never to be seen again. It's usually the sign of some bad needlework or some bad
I look at my 7-year-old's artwork when he comes home. I mean, I know he's not listening, but I'll just be honest about it, it's rubbish. I mean, it's absolutely awful. There's
the
nothing.
Fridge of doom.
The fridge. You can't get in the darn fridge. There's nothing to... It's just full of these odd pictures that we all go, oh, it's amazing. It's not amazing at all. It's absolutely horrific. I don't know whether there's some interpretation of it. But in terms of food, I mean, Mark there mentioned on the voice note that he thinks there's some religious, obviously pork not eaten by Jews and Muslims, so would that be, is that a consideration that it just gets that out of the way?
Well, we've got this huge debate going on at the moment about labelling, haven't we? Should people be able to eat the food that their religious denomination requires? Well, that should be an option, but should other people have the information and the knowledge to make the choice not to eat food that's been killed in such a way? Of course they should. It's the right thing.
When it comes to school dinners, though, I can't ever, just being brutally honest, I can't recall any great veg on the menu at school. All I remember is there was constant conversations about making it healthier, but chips were always an option. Every day you could just buy chips if you wanted.
But when you went to school, did they have the plates? Did you have plates? Did you have those awful plastic trays where your custard went in with your whatever it might be that's meant to be the main? We ended up with those trays that was one pile of slop was the main.
What, like a prison tray?
Yeah, that's what we got. I think we've got rid of that now. But in my day, that's what they had.
We had plates and like china plates, whatever they were made of. And do you remember the great thing in the canteen when somebody dropped one? And the whole canteen would go, "Hey!" It was a brilliant moment because somebody smashed a plate. And once in a while, somebody would probably do it on purpose as they were queuing up. But I just don't remember there being lots of veg there. And I was probably glad of that as a kid because I hated veg as a kid, but love it as an adult.
Yeah, same school of thought. But I think, well, also you just end up with contraband food coming in, won't you? You'll end up with more people on packed lunches. I remember as a kid at secondary school, we used to get to the back of the school field at Grangefield School, over the fence, and we went to the local chippy. Which meant we had no balance because we were eating chippy as often as we wanted it. So yeah, if you knock it out of the school, people are going to bring more packed lunches, probably with the more unhealthy rubbish in them.
Indeed. Well, we've actually got a clip of you, Matt, here.
Oh.
Yeah. Talking about being proud about British cuisine
very good.
beer. Have a listen to this.
Happy St George's Day. Let's raise a glass to everything that makes England great.
From a good English fry-up to the nation's favourite fish and chips. We are home to the best brew. You can't beat a great English cuppa.
And let's be honest, nobody makes a Sunday roast like we do.
And then there's that great English delicacy, the chicken parma, that we got on the menu in here.
But not only do we do great grub, we're the innovators and inventors who shape the world.
Now, you go to the top of the class on this one, Matt, because, you know, we live in a world where we've seen Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer's TikTok videos. So you've offered something of real note there. We're only 10 days away from St George's Day, of course.
Countdown is on.
Countdown is on. You mentioned the great chicken what?
Great chicken parmo. You haven't had a parmo?
I've not had a parmo.
You've never lived. So this is a delicacy.
This is a northeast thing.
This is a Teesside delicacy.
Okay.
So this is chicken, bechamel sauce, cheese, basically a cardiac arrest in a box. I think it started life as a
That's the spirit for Britain.
It started life as it definitely will not be allowed in schools, I'm sure of that. But it started life, I think, as a sort of a takeaway job on the way home, and now they serve it in all the pubs. It's great stuff. Get yourself to Teesside, get yourself a parma, it'll sort you right out.
That's what you need. But, I mean, can I get one in Tesco? Or
solving anybody's calorie deficit. Well, they started doing it. I think there's a brand that started doing them in Aston, and you could buy them at home. We obviously got it on the menu in Parliament now occasionally.
Is it?
It's all go. It's all go.
Did you fight for the chicken parma?
It was a one-man campaign. We got in there. It sold out on day one. It was so popular.
Did it really?
Yeah. Greasy naughtiness. Everybody wants a piece. If you're in a calorie deficit, just call in a parma.
Well, there are quite a lot. There are quite a lot of diets that require a calorific surge.
Yeah.
Right? So,
what do you call it? Building, massing. What do they call it? Bulking.
Bulking.
That's what they call it. You need to bulk.
My mate who fluctuates between being, really toned, guy to an absolute fat git. Between those two, I think the chicken parmo is possibly introduced.
From rich
Sorry, John,
to
if you're
chubby.
listening. Yeah. We are going to take a pause in a moment. Lots to get through. 0344 499 1000. You can voice note us there as well. Call on that number too. You can message 87222. Matt Vickers is with us, Conservative MP and Deputy Chair of the Tory Party. Do we need a national immigration inquiry? I know there's a lot of inquiries going on. They seem to cost a bomb. They take forever. Nigel Farage is suggesting we do need one, and the first person he might call as a witness would be Boris Johnson, because he says the Boris wave of immigration will cost every British household £20,000 due to the 1.6 million people who moved to the UK under Boris and his successors. Your thoughts on that? And of course, we mentioned Matt raised the issue about grooming gangs a little earlier, that Nigel Farage talked a lot about having one himself, but never did. Here's a voice note from Carl. Morning, Carl.
Hi, Ian. Carl in Bury. Just listening to Matt Vickers having a pop at Nigel Farage regarding the rape gang inquiries. Let's just get this right. Before mentioned about doing a rape gang inquiry, and then they took legal advice and they were told there's no point doing it if it's a non-statutory inquiry, so people can't be forced to come up and give evidence. So they basically said they're going to do one if they actually get into power, because it will have full statutory legal requirements for people to give evidence under oath. Now, that's something for the last 14 years that the Tory party hasn't done. So Matt Vickers can have a pop at Nigel Farage if he likes, but I didn't see his party do a single thing about it in the last 14 years. Cheers, Ian.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is just a little after 6:30. Good morning. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on Talk Breakfast. So much to get through in the programme. Your calls, your inquiries, your questions, your points on 0344 499 1000. Matt Vickers is with us, Conservative MP, Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. I know just briefly wanted to come back to, Matt, we had that voice note just before the news about grooming gangs, where it was it Mark that sent us that last note? I think it was. Said the Tories did nothing.
I think so. Well, there's two bits to this. So there's January 2025. Farage says if government will not hold a full public inquiry, we at Reform will have no difficulty in raising the money to do this. That was a pledge to some of the most vulnerable people in our society who've been through some of the most horrific things. I think if you promise something like that, you need to look at whether you deliver it. But also, before you promise something like that, you should think about the consequences and whether it can or can't be done. You shouldn't make pledges unless you've thought them through and you know what the consequences are. The reality is, do I wish that the last government had done more on this? Yes, I do. But what it did do is that it set up the Grooming Gangs Task Force, which identified thousands of victims and hundreds of perpetrators and saw action taken against them. So stuff was done. Do I wish that more had been done? Of course I do. But what was it, about less than 18 months ago, we found out that 50 towns across the UK, big piece of research was done, 50 towns across the UK were seen to be linked to this. Nobody knew that was the scale. Nobody knew the level of cover-up. We now need to get to the bottom of that, and we need to get to the bottom of it quickly. We need to learn the lessons. We need to make sure all of those vulnerable young women are looked after properly, and we need to make sure this can never happen again. We shouldn't make false promises to vulnerable people. We need to deliver on it.
Yeah, that's fair. What marks this out, Matt, of course, because once in a while, usually those on the left will say, well, why are you picking on this specific area? Well, grooming gangs and sexual offences against children covers a wide range of different areas of perpetrator, whether they are in the Catholic Church, as we saw some years back. The massive global inquiry really into that. This is very specific for many reasons, but one of them is the way that law enforcement and those that should have been in charge ignored the complaints.
Yeah,
and that could have been law enforcement, could have been councils, could have been social services, could have been teachers, clinicians, all sorts of people across the board.
Yeah, and they all need to be held to account for
Correct.
it. If you turned a blind eye to this, if you help someone cover this up, you need to be held to account. No ifs, no buts. I mean, we heard from Simon Danchuk, former Labour MP, who told us that he was told by the Labour Party not to mention the race or ethnicity of the perpetrators.
Yes.
That was what was wrong with this. The fact there was a cover-up, the fact people were scared because of community tensions. Actually, if you are in the wrong, if you are responsible for this, if there is a certain group more responsible for this, it needs to be called out, and the victims need to be supported, protected, and those who covered it up held to account.
Absolutely. And I remember one story, this is from a few years ago, I'm sure we could find it again, was from a woman who worked in a local council who raised this issue and was, as a result of raising the issue, the ethnicity and the background of the perpetrators, she was sent on a racial awareness course. I mean, you can't
tells you everything that's wrong.
She was sent on a course. Sorry, love, you can't say that kind of thing. You're going on a course.
It's just a disaster, isn't it? But that's exactly what was wrong. That was why this was allowed to go on for as long as it was. That's why so many people fell victim to it, and that's why these girls were let down so badly.
Back to schools, both dinners and lessons here. Cliff says, morning, Ian. I think the rot set in when the government closed school kitchens and sacked the army of school dinner ladies and cooks. My mum was a dinner lady at the school I was at. A bit embarrassing at the time, that one. But there's two types of dinner lady. There's the dinner lady that walks around in the playground, right? And then there's the dinner lady that is in the kitchen.
Is that why you got such sizable portions then, Ian? You get an extra.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't that dinner lady. She was the one in the playground. So.
The one who restored common sense to our playgrounds, yeah, and kept the kids in line.
Absolutely. Bill in Cheshire says, woodwork at school in the olden days. I still use a wobbly wooden letter rack that I made 60 years ago. It's all right, isn't it?
I don't think anything I made would have lasted 60 years.
Well, I mean, there was an era, and I don't know if this era... No, it can't exist, because I'm a dad now, so I know this, but there was sort of an era where dads could do stuff and build stuff. It's like if you said, I want my bed to look like a coffin or something with some drawers underneath it, your dad would go, I'll do that. And up he'd go with a load of wood and hammers and saws, and he'd come out at the end of Sunday afternoon. Poor guy had been working all week. And he'd set up there, and then there was, wow, he'd put make a desk in your bedroom, and
also
could repair stuff.
I would love to be able to do that stuff, but I also think the world's moved on. Well, the priorities of people have moved on in that now they just go to IKEA, they buy this cheap stuff. Yeah. It usually works. It stands the test of time. There's something cool about having something made properly, but actually, kids now look at these. What is it? The 3D printer. And all this stuff. I went down one of those man sheds recently. Yeah. And you had the people who were doing the woodwork who had all the kit, and it was very cool. But then you had a guy in the corner who was doing his 3D printed. He could create anything at the touch of a button, which was also pretty cool. That seems to be where the kids are playing now.
Yeah, my eldest boy is 12. He's doing exactly that. He said we've got 3D printers coming into the science and tech department. Very excited.
They're doing all these things that we don't know how to do.
But just a great marker for how times have changed. I mean, whether you did it in artwork or whether you did it in metalwork, you know, often you were asked to make an ashtray. You were 12. Right, kids, we're going to make an ashtray today.
I think if you're 12 now, you're not going to be able to smoke until you're about 40. Isn't that the way the legislation?
The one who makes the best ashtray gets a free pack of 20 Rothmans. I mean, that was the way to do it. That's all you needed. This comes from Steve, who says, "Morning, Ian and Matt. I was the first lad at my now closed school to take domestic science in 1975. I was rubbish at technical drawing. This led me to go to catering college, then go on to join the forces as a cabbage mechanic." Sorry, a cabbage mechanic. So, what's a cabbage mechanic? That's obviously a thing. We're researching it as we speak. As for dinners at school, teachers were at our tables. The kids got the tins of food and served it up to the rest of the table on crockery plates. So the kids
proper plates as well, not plastic trays. Very good. It goes to show the careers that are there for people to have.
Well, you could become a cabbage mechanic. What's a cabbage mechanic? I know this is going to sound... Someone's going to go...
Is that a typo? Was it meant to be catering or something? It's one of those, like...
well, Steve went
predictive text.
It could be. Steve went to catering college. Maybe there's... Have we got any intel on that, Christian? Anything on a cabbage mechanic? Do we know what that is? I mean, a cabbage mechanic... There you go. A cabbage mechanic is a specialised agriculture machine that automatically harvests cabbages by aligning, gripping, cutting and conveying the heads. These machines can replace up to 15 to 30 labourers. I mean, I've seen that.
Yeah.
You know, when some supermarket, they have a big machine, it goes out there, picks the broccoli, wraps it, washes it, wraps it there and then on the thing. It comes out of a field, it's in Tesco in 40 minutes.
That's even more creative than a 3D printer.
That's why we need more cabbage mechanics. It's as simple as that. But yeah, I'd never thought of the terminology in that respect. Steve, thank you very much indeed for that. Technical drawing, there was another one. Technical, what was all that about really? Why was I doing technical drawing in my 5th year at school?
That's another thing they do with the computer now. They don't do that. They just press a few buttons and boom.
And it's made. Yeah, I didn't require this level of education of technical drawing. The kids, it was a classic example of the kid. It's a bit like PE, isn't it? I mean, if you're not into sport, then was there any great reason why you should still be doing it other than ticking the government box of we're giving kids exercise?
If you go for a run, you might be allowed fish and chips at the end of the week. I think that's probably why it has.
See, I would have been, when I was about 15, you know, to have fish and chips and then go out in the playground with my newly made ashtray and a quick sip before double maths. I mean, that's what school should be about. There's a whole rounded education for you. Let's move on to something far more serious, only just. This is Keir Starmer and what's being called another Brexit betrayal, Matt. So this is the idea that once the new trade deal has been struck, I can't quite keep up with that story about the trade deal. Is there a trade deal? Is it in the offing? Are we still... What are we waiting for? But once that's been done, the government can introduce any further rule changes without it going to the vote. So under Starmer's government, you guys would not get a vote on it. They could just plonk, rubber stamp it. We're good to go.
And the reality is it won't just be Starmer and this government doing that. It'll be the EU doing that. We're going to be the rule takers, not the rule makers anymore. Yeah. That vote was all about sovereignty, the rights and wrongs of it. People told you that the sky was going to fall if we got out. The sky was going to fall if we stayed in. The reality is we made a decision. We're now carving our own way. We've got trade deals elsewhere in the globe now. We're some of the biggest and fastest growing economies. That means we can do more trade. Does that mean we should hate the EU and never have anything to do with them? No, we should continue to trade with them. They're our near neighbours. But it means that we should set our own course in the world. And actually, the idea of taking on all of this EU bureaucracy does have real consequences. We saw the news at the weekend, OpenAI, looking to create thousands of super-duper jobs in the northeast, have pulled out because of our energy costs and also because of the threat of all of this bureaucracy. It does have consequences. It will prevent us trading with others. It's costing thousands of jobs through the likes of OpenAI. We can't do all this stuff by the back door. You elect MPs, whether you like them or not, you elect them to go make decisions. You should have the right to de-elect them, to get rid of them, or elect them again to do more of it.
But not
have these decisions.
But it's that kind of thinking that has put Trump in the driving seat, in that, you know, forget the bureaucracy, just do it. And there is a school of thought. I know, look, I appreciate that if you're making significant rules and regulations, whether it's about food or stuff we buy, cars, that kind of thing, you know, you've got to have, there's got to be a reasonable template of what is acceptable. You can't manufacture a car with paper mache wheels. I mean, that would just be stupid and frankly dangerous. But we did try to make that in school once, so that's another story. It never took off. But by the same token, the idea that the heady levels, the just ridiculous levels of bureaucracy that we have in this country in terms of, as a result, quite possibly mainly as a result of being in the EU, I mean, they run into, it's like the full set of Encyclopedia Britannica when it used to be in book form for every single area of our life is governed by these ridiculous rules and regulations. I
think one of the other reasons that people would argue the EU didn't work for us was because actually when the EU made rules that we were all meant to stick to, the UK actually tended to stick to them, whereas other partners in the EU didn't do so at all. Farmers will tell you about the examples of gold-plated legislation that we had in the UK as a result of EU directives, where our farmers were jumping through hoops to comply with all sorts of things, and then they were selling product in a marketplace where other EU nations were going nowhere near complying with those regulations. You know, it was just an unfair advantage. You make rules, everybody sticks by them, or nobody sticks by them.
Do you know what? There is a rule. You may or may not know this, Matt, but when Boris Johnson got it, he wrote a Telegraph column years ago about the EU regulations on bananas, that they've got to look a certain way, and he got roundly sort of, you know, condemned as a conspiracy theory. He's making up stories about bananas. He was absolutely right. There is a regulation on what your nana can look like.
The bendiness of the banana.
Nobody wants a manky banana. Nobody wants to be shortchanged in the banana department. I've got to be careful with this. Nobody wants to go for a bunch of bananas and discover there's two. I mean, that's not a bunch of bananas. So there was a set of regulations on this. But the Trump position on that would be, just sell your bananas. If they're rubbish, no one's going to buy them. They won't go back to that store.
And the biggest losers are the bendyless bananas who get, you know, binned.
Yes. I mean, you can't have a straight banana, can you? I mean, you're in the wrong shop if that's what you're looking for. This comes from Ian. Cabbage mechanics. We've got the answer to this.
Enlightened.
And actually, it's pretty obvious, really, if you think about it. I think you said the guy was in the forces. A cabbage mechanic is a cook. It's a colloquial term.
Oh, right.
Cook. Yeah, Steve says cabbage mechanic. Old world forces slang for cook. That's all. You're overthinking it. Steve's absolutely right. And Ian says, I knew a bean mechanic who started out as a runner. This is the level of humour. It's going to get no better than that, Matt. It's going to get no better.
Well, at least we've got the banter now when we're speaking to veterans. We can talk about cabbage mechanics.
Richard in Leicester makes this point. Are you going to mention the Irish fuel protest? Could that happen here? I think it might have been Cliff, I think, on Friday, who said, has there been a thing in the media to not mention it so we don't get a replication of it here? It was a completely reasonable question. That wasn't the reason, as it turns out. It's just something that hadn't it hadn't developed legs, as it were, as a story over here, but very serious in Ireland.
Yeah, I mean...
You get the army in because people are understandably unhappy about the cost of filling up a car.
Yeah, I mean, it is huge because it has an impact on families and the choices that they make and where they can and can't go. It has a huge impact on people trying to get to work. It has a huge impact on businesses. And the reality is the government is profiteering from this because of those duties, because of all those tariffs. They're actually making £20 million a day in extra costs because as your fuel price goes up, they take a bigger share of it. Because something like 45% of your fuel that you put in your car is actually, 54% is actually tax. So as the price of this stuff goes up, Rachel Reeves is making a killing out of it, and she's still considering putting a bigger tariff on top of that, increasing that fuel
In fact,
duty.
it's worse than that, isn't it? Because if you then factor in that the retailers are also taxed on their profits, so it's an even greater...
It's a windfall, yeah.
It's an absolute windfall. They keep talking about this, well, we won't put the increase up or we'll put the freeze on. It's like, but your wiggle room is massive on this. I know... You know, if you suddenly halve the government taxation on petrol, you've got to then find it somewhere else. I kind of get that.
And there is real world consequences if we do all go around panicking about it and everybody panic. I mean, do you remember the bog roll shortage of the pandemic? There was a shortage of bog rolls. I thought there was going to be a shortage of scotch. When people start panic buying, things go to pot regardless. If we all start panic buying over fuel, we'll end up with real disastrous consequences.
I saw a woman in the supermarket at that time who could hardly get her trolley out the door because it was so laden with bog roll. I mean, it was. I thought you need to be in a laboratory or a clinic somewhere. You shouldn't be in a supermarket. I was worried about walking behind her in the car park. I have to say.
And the following Halloween, all of the kids started going out as Egyptian mummies covered in all the bog roll.
Yeah,
in the cupboard under the
loads of bog
stairs.
roll, loads of it, and hand sanitizer as well. Strangely enough, loads of that. Strange times we live in. 0344 499 1000. You can leave a voice note there for us, or call on that number. You can message 87222. Matt Vickers still with us. More stories still to come. It's 10 to 7. This is Talk.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Yeah, good morning. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle. He's off for a couple of weeks. Lots happening here this morning. Absolutely rammed. Matt Vickers is still with us, Conservative MP, Deputy Chair of the Tory Party. Your comments as well on a whole range of issues. Morning, Adrian.
I think Trump is dealing with the cancer of the world in Iran, and they're going to radiotherapy it. They're going to blast it. They're going to stop nutrients getting to it, so they're going to shut the straits so it starves the regime out. That's what it's about. We shouldn't be relying on a small strait to get the bulk of our oil. And as you've said quite rightly, we should be drill, baby, drill, and get it out the ground.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think some countries, Matt, are actually looking for a workaround route, aren't they? To try and find another way to get it. I mean, the idea that it's just one bit of the whole world, or a fifth of 20% of the world's oil is held to ransom because of this strip of water.
Well, our workaround's really obvious. It's in the North Sea. We need to get on with the job.
As Adrian just suggested, it's literally here. It's like, if we were a country where it wasn't here, I get it. I've seen the argument.
Yeah,
people go, well, what do we do? Let's scratch our head. Let's do, let's do
this
some
is Keir
blue sky
Starmer
thinking.
Literally accepting Just Stop Oil's sort of agenda and their manifesto and just doing it for them. Them causing all the harm and havoc to people's jobs, to the price of filling up a car and everything else that comes with it.
The problem is, when we have these debates, and I hate to do this, especially at like 7 minutes to 7 in the morning. I mean, the sun is out, certainly round here. I don't want to spoil anybody's day, but I have to mention Ed Miliband. See, I've done it already there. Spitting your cornflakes out. Now, Ed ordinarily is about as welcome as measles to any kind of debate, but this one, he excels himself because he simply... I mean, he's gone so evangelical on this, it's disturbing. I can't believe he's still got a job in the cabinet, but that's interesting because no matter what initiatives, like when they did the Heathrow expansion, you'd think that would be a red line for Ed Miliband. But the red box was more important than the red line, wasn't it? So he thought, no, I can hang on here. Now
well, he might be hanging... He's waiting for the keys to number 10, isn't he? It's all going on.
I mean, he gave it a go once, didn't he? I mean, it's not like he hasn't tried for number 10. Gave it a go. It didn't work. Some people are just not cut out for that job, like our current Prime Minister.
I'm sure Ed Miliband is not cut out for the job. The problem with all this, like, evangelical, super-duper green at all costs is it puts the rest of us off. Actually... the green agenda, the opportunity, if you get ahead of the tech on this stuff and you can create jobs. We've got in Teesside, we've got this, I think it's Europe's biggest factory is creating monopiles for wind turbines. That's really good. It's creating jobs, it's opportunities. Is there things around bioethanol, putting bioethanol into creating jobs, taking advantage of it? There are opportunities there. There are ways you can save money by doing the green stuff. But we shouldn't be torturing ourselves to be green.
Well, that's the point.
1% of global emissions we're responsible for. China's responsible for 30%. So what we should do is import everything from China and let them be dirtier and messier and
utterly
more emissions.
Mad. No one is against finding an alternative source of energy. Come back in a couple of 100 years, whatever it is, there won't be any oil. We all understand that. So you've got to find new ways of doing it. China have actually played a blinder because they've simply worked on the basis that we are going to build alternative forms. We'll do the windmills, we'll do the solar panels if they're not intrusive. But simultaneously, we're going to use what's around us as well. We're not going to cut off our nose to spite our face.
It is. And if you can do something with green stuff that actually saves you money, that creates jobs, it's a no-brainer. But the other problem is that technology moves on so fast at the moment. In my part of the world, we've got 2,500 acre solar farm, cumulative, taking over the countryside. Agricultural land that should be generating food is instead going to be tied up in solar farms. I reckon in 15 years everybody going, what the hell were we putting those down for? They're not energy efficient. They're not the easiest way to do this. They cost a fortune. They're damaging to the countryside. And we'll have found a cleverer way to do it. You've got to cash in when they...
It's one thing having a panel on the back of your house, but 2,500 acres. There's one down in Faversham. I think it's Helen Whately's constituency, isn't it, down that neck of the woods? I think there's another one down there. There's similar. These things are like the size of sort of 28 Wembley stadiums. It's like there's nothing insignificant. They're massive.
Well, you used to look out at rolling countryside. Now, in too many places across the country, we're looking out at fields and fields and fields of solar panels that aren't actually generating that much energy. And then the tech will be outdated so quickly. We'll be wondering why we did this to ourselves.
This in from Roger in Hounslow, completely different subject matter. He says, in 1981, my metalwork teacher said to my friend and I, we were so good that he challenged us to rebuild his vandalised Renault 4. We did a brilliant job, and it was like new when we finished it. Sounds like child labour in today's world. That's a great thing to do. If you're a teacher, could you possibly just rebuild my car? I need some panel beaters, couple of welders, and a mechanic.
And in the back room, he had a lot of them stitching rugs and clothes.
They worked about the elves and the shoemaker over there at his school. It was all going on. Yeah, nice interior at the end of it. Yeah, sold it for 28 grand, bought it for 400 quid. I don't know what the figures were on all of that. But that's a great start. Simon says, Simon in Hereford, reference to our failing relationship with America. Keir Starmer can use this as an excuse to rejoin the EU. Membership through the back door. Yeah, that's a good point. He's now worked on the basis that he's kind of toast come 2029. Well, he might be toast come the elections in 3.5 weeks' time. But the Labour Party will remain till 2029, whether he leads it or not. But there is a suggestion now that his only option, his kind of nuclear option for 2029, is to say we will rejoin the EU.
The thing is, all of these decisions are going to take so much unpicking. Whatever mandate he did in, at about 33% of the vote. Yeah, he's got a huge parliamentary majority. He's inflicting some of the worst harms on this country, whether it be in our international relationship setting. All of the relationships he's creating with the EU will have to be unpicked and unstitched. We'll have to fix the relationship we've got with the US. However badly the relationship is between him and Trump, actually, what do the people of the US think of the UK now? We used to have this sort of shared interests. We loved each other. They cared about what we did. We cared about... I don't know what the people of the US would be thinking when Starmer's refusing to allow them access to our air bases, when we're constantly muddying this relationship and their own president is talking out against us. What does that mean for the future?
I'm always banging on about the sort of Thatcher-Reagan relationship, whether people were around at the time or not. Everyone's aware of what there was. There was a documentary about a year or so ago specifically on that. What I hadn't realised, Matt, was just how powerful, even then, this is not like ancient history, how powerful and influential this country was. That's all gone.
Yeah, and actually that division, the strength of the response to Ukraine, the reason that the response in the first instance was so powerful was because we were working in lockstep with the US. People came together. Actually, if you're China now, if you're Russia, you're looking at Trump and Starmer knocking spots off each other. You think, well, here is an opportunity. Here is a weakness in the West that can be taken advantage of.
We're out of time, Matt. Are you back over the road now to
back
the House
to the big
Commons
house
for a £2 full-on fried breakfast? Fantastic. That's the way to do it.
No fish and chips, though.
No fish and chips. No, none of that. Matt, good to see you. Thank you. Matt Vickers, Conservative MP, and he is Deputy Chair of the Tory Party as well. More from you on the way. It's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on the Talk Breakfast Show. Lines are open, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk Breakfast. Yeah, good morning. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for a couple of weeks. 3 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning. You can call us up 0344 499 1000. Any of the issues we're chatting about here, drop us a voice note there as well or message 87222. It's a curious Monday morning. The world continues to be a bit upside down for the umpteenth time this year. Donald Trump is now closing the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious. We need educating on this one, since the whole point of this part of the war, as most of us saw it, was to actually get the thing open. We'll have more on that. Nigel Farage talking about a national inquiry into immigration. He's pointing the finger directly at Boris Johnson, saying This level of Boris wave immigration will cost every single Brit 20,000, every single family, £20,000. These are huge numbers. 20,000 quid as a direct result of Boris wave immigration and successive leaders that followed. We're talking about Keir Starmer, another Brexit betrayal. We'll come on to that in just a second. New PM in Hungary. Viktor's been kicked out after 16 years. There's now a new kid on the block. He's pro-EU, but still a centre-right government, it seems. And fish and chips is set to be banned from school dinners. Here's a question. No one's talking about what's replacing fish and chips. So we were told earlier that sausage rolls are already gone. Can't get a sausage roll at school. And now fish and chips as well. What are the poor bairns going to be left with? This is going to be a broccoli fest and nothing else. Thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Let's speak with Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online. Morning to you, Brendan.
Morning, Ian.
I'm tempted to start with fish and chips, actually, in a slightly more light-hearted... The tradition, I know, is to finish with a light-hearted story. But there is something actually in this, in terms of sort of government overreach. You know, we all understand we don't want kids just eating muck on a daily basis. But when the likes of this government start dictating that, well, you can't have sausage rolls, you can't have fish and chips, I don't know what's going to be left for kids.
Well, you know, kids should eat healthily, of course. Everyone agrees with that. But they also need a bit of joy in their lives. Yep. You know, let them have fish and chips once a week. Let them have a sausage roll every now and then. They don't have to have it every single day. My school dinners were hamburgers and chips, and then we'd queue up at the ice cream van at the school gate and get some sweets. Now, that wasn't great, but we all survived. We did pretty well. Let kids have a bit of fun. That's what I say.
Well, I'm starting a campaign to build a KFC at every school, so I don't know where that sits with this this government's initiative, but I doubt it will happen. I do remember Jamie Oliver a few years ago when they started to get, I think it was under the last Blair government, to start to get strict on what kids can eat. Remember, there were parents outside the school putting burgers through the fence for their kids.
Yeah. I remember it so well. There was a photograph of two mothers, I think, putting fish and chips through the school gate to save their kids from all this kale and broccoli that Jamie Oliver wanted.
Well, this was all over a turkey Twizzler ban, as I recall.
Yeah, it was. You know, Jamie Oliver, bless him. I know he's becoming a bit of a national treasure lately, having been a bit of a kind of comedic figure for a while. But he did drain the joy out of schools. You know, no more turkey Twizzlers, no more processed food, nothing sweet, nothing too salty. It went too far, you know. We should let kids run around, let them eat some, you know, rubbish food here and there. Yeah. You know, we don't have to over-police everything that a child does.
Indeed. Let's talking about over-policing. Rules and regulations. Keir Starmer, he's at it again, Brendan. I mean, it seems that this man, it's clearly in his DNA. We know that. He wouldn't refute the suggestion that he's massively pro-EU and rather we hadn't left. The bit that he's missing in that story is that we have left. 2016 was a democratic vote. We voted to leave, not to rejoin by instalments.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He himself wouldn't deny that he is an EU file at heart. He's always loved the European Union. He's always wanted to be part of it. You know, let's not forget, then when he was in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet and he was the Brexit minister or whatever they called it, his whole shtick, Keir Starmer's whole shtick, was to get us back in. He wanted to cancel the referendum and have a second referendum, which would have meant voiding the largest vote in the history of this country. He wanted to drag us back either entirely or bit by bit, and he's now doing the same thing. Despite having promised a couple of years ago that Brexit was over and he wasn't going to sell it out, that is what he's doing. You know, piece by piece, he's dragging us under EU rules that MPs, the Commons potentially won't even be allowed to vote on. And I think that's a betrayal of what we Britons voted for.
What is it? There's a certain type of MP, a British MP. The one image that always springs to mind is seeing Rishi Sunak, Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron in various situations over the latter years of the Conservative government. Rishi Sunak was very relaxed in that place. I mean, he can talk all he likes about being pro-Brexit, but he was cut from that same cloth. Keir Starmer has upped it a notch. Again, they are more that they are more comfortable in an internationalist environment. Their heart beats at a better rate when they are with other global leaders. What is that?
That's exactly right. You know, they're either more comfortable in Brussels, rubbing shoulders with all these unelected bureaucrats, or, of course, at Davos. Do you remember Starmer was asked if he preferred to be at Davos or Westminster, and he just very quickly said Davos, you know, rubbing shoulders with the gold-collared superclass, the super rich, you know, the kind of politically correct, wealthy men and women. They love those environments because it gets them away from us. They don't like to mingle with ordinary British people because, of course, if they go up north or in the Midlands or somewhere in Wales to rub shoulders with the ordinary Brits, they'll get an earful. You know, they'll get someone saying, what are you doing about mass immigration? What are you doing about the underfunding of schools and hospitals? They don't like mixing with Brits because we put them under pressure. We remind them that they are democratically elected and that they are beholden to us and they should be doing what we want. Whereas when they go off and clink their champagne glasses with all these rich people or all these kind of grey-suited bureaucrats, they can just have their own personal little chit-chats and come up with their own ideas. So it's about escaping democracy. It's about escaping the consequences of democracy. That's what Keir Starmer loves about the European Union. It allows him to make decisions over the heads of ordinary Brits.
Yeah, and when I look at the EU and I look at the various leaders of the countries in the EU, whether it's Macron or Merz, whoever it happens to be, Scholz before him, these are very mediocre people when it comes to politics. And when you go down the rabbit hole, just, I suppose, dint of doing this job, Brendan, once in a while I look and I live in hope that I'm going to find this one euphoric moment where I see the brilliance in one of these leaders. And they are mediocrity reigns supreme across that block.
Oh, absolutely. We live in such an era of amateur politicians, you know, people who are just so spectacularly uninspiring. They're not good orators. They don't have good ideas. They don't have visions for their nation. Certainly none of Keir Starmer's government has a good vision for the nation. Just compare it. You don't even have to go back to Churchill or Thatcher, and people will have agreed and disagreed with some things that those politicians did. But I think we all agree they were very good leaders. You know, you just have to go back to the era of Tony Blair. You know, we all moaned about Tony Blair when he was in power, but if you look back and contrast him to the kind of dull, lifeless technocrats who now run this country, he seems like an inspiring global statesman in comparison. So there has been a massive downward turn in the quality of our politicians. And that is one of the consequences of these globalist institutions. Because if you're cutting your teeth in the comfortable environment of the EU or some, you know, highfalutin think tank or Davos or somewhere else, you're not really learning how to be a politician. You're not learning how to speak to ordinary people. You're not learning how to do politics. So we've ended up with a very amateurish crowd.
Yeah, and they seem, I think Gordon Brown had a degree in this as well. They love a database. They love a sort of clinical setup, a pre-prepared press release to read, nothing off the cuff, nothing in the pit of the belly. You know, people can say what they like about Donald Trump. And yes, of course, he gets it wrong sometimes, but that sense of here's an angry politician. When he said to Keir Starmer about, you know, can we use your bases for our military for this this attempt on Iran a few weeks back, and Starmer said, I better go and ask some people. And Trump said, well, no, you're the Prime Minister, mate. You can make that decision. But, of course, we don't work like that. We don't have... But it's once in a while you need a politician. You need a leader that does shoot from the hip a bit.
Yeah, well, Starmer is just a boring lawyer at heart. So everything has to be checked with a committee. Everything has to be checked. You know, is it legal? Have we ticked all the boxes? Is everything absolutely airtight? Will there be any blowback? What will the consequences be? You know, how many committees, how many quangos should we run it by first? That is how our politicians think. Everything gets held up by process, by this bureaucracy. Whereas at least Trump, for all his faults, at least he shoots from the hip, speaks honestly. And when he says he's going to get things done, he tends to get them done. We need more politicians like that who are actual leaders, who can think for themselves, who can force through an agenda rather than U-turning every day of the week, as Starmer does. So, yeah, it is that lack of inspiration, that lack of leadership. I think that's getting to a lot of people in this country right now.
Just a brief point, Brendan, if you would, on Trump and the Strait of Hormuz. Bit of confusion on this story, of course. The whole as we understood it, the whole point of this recent part, this latest part of the war with Iran was to get that strait open, to get vessels moving through it, in and out, etc. But now we understand the Americans are closing it. What would be the point of that? What would be the purpose, and why should they get our help?
I think they're trying to seize back the initiative from Iran, because the one card Iran has is the Strait of Hormuz. They were able to exercise extraordinary power over it over the past few weeks, and I think Trump wants to wrest that away from them by taking control himself and blockading certain parts of it. But the stuff we've heard over the past few weeks from sections of the media and a lot of the left, saying that the Islamic Republic has won this war and humiliated the Western world, I don't buy that. I think they're underestimating how much the Islamic Republic has lost. Vast layers of their leadership have been wiped out. Their weapons systems have been decimated. Their nuclear program is up in the air. We still don't quite know what's going on with that. And now, if Trump can take back the initiative of the Strait of Hormuz from the Islamic Republic, it's game over for them. So I think he might be playing a clever game. But as you know, Ian, and as everyone knows, war is an unpredictable business, so we don't quite know what's going to come next.
Back to domestic matters. Nigel Farage talking about an immigration inquiry. I mean, we need inquiries like we need a hole in the head, for goodness sake, but he's maybe onto something here. He's talking about the Boris wave in particular being a pivotal point in the damage that has been done to this country, claiming that Boris wave immigration will cost every British household £20,000 due to the 1.6 million people. I mean, these numbers are just jaw-dropping. We forget this sometimes. These stories happen so often that we forget the real detail and the seriousness of this. 1.6 million people who've moved to the UK under Boris Johnson and his successors. The number is absolutely massive. The figure is huge, £20,000 claim reform. Do we need an inquiry into this?
My instinct is to agree with you. We just don't need any more inquiries. That's the politicians' solution to everything. Let's have another inquiry. Now, there are some issues, of course, that are so huge and so under-discussed over the years, for example, the rape gang scandal, that you do feel that we need an honest reckoning with it. We do need to sit down and go over it and see what happened. But with the Boris wave, I just think our politicians should take action rather than talking about it. The numbers, as you say, are just extraordinary. 1.6 million people over the space of a few years coming to this country. The way in which Boris and his successors turned this country into a hotel, into a shopping mall, into a place where anyone can come, rock up, stay here forever pretty much, take jobs away from ordinary Brits. It was unforgivable what they did, the way in which they treated this country. I don't think we need another inquiry. We need action. We need to better police our borders. We need to control immigration, because that's what ordinary Brits want the politicians to do. And we need to make a promise that Britain will respect its own sovereignty and stop selling off its sovereignty to Brussels and selling it off to all the people who want to come and live here, even though they may not have the right to do so. So no inquiries, I would say, just serious leadership on the issue of sovereignty. That's what we need.
Brendan, on that point, great to see you again. Thank you, Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked Online. Thank you to him. Over to you on all of this. 0344 499 1000. You can message 87222. Let's get a voice note. Morning, Boz.
Morning, Ian. Travelling Boz here. Our Prime Minister, Chairman Starmer, he's not interested in close ties with the Americans. He's guiding our battleship or dinghy towards closer ties with Europe. He was the anti-Brexit minister, I think. He will not accept what the English people want or the British people want. And he wants to run all this in because he knows his time is coming up.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:20. Yeah, good morning. Welcome back. It is, of course, the home of common sense. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for a couple of weeks. Good to have your company. So much to get. The news agenda is absolutely rammed this morning. It's got everything in there, from the serious stuff to the lighter stuff. Like fish and chips. Banning fish and chips in schools. Mike says, I think banning fish and chips is a cost-cutting measure rather than a health measure, now that fish and chips are so darn expensive. By giving them gruel, they will save 10 quid a head. Will this misery never stop? It's a great point. Is it financial? Bit of old fish, even the cheaper stuff, can be costly. Jane makes a wider point, says, I'll be 75 this year. How the hell have I survived? We had dripping on toast. Dripping on toast. I mean, how did that not just kill off everybody after about a week? Dripping on toast and pone pot of stew lasting a week. Also, school dinners. The custard tasted like paper. My mum gave me Ovaltine and sugar as a sweet. Great to see you in. You see, people did survive, and survived into long years. What is the increase in longevity since those days, specifically linked to food? I don't know if you'd find an impressive figure. Not the one you might think you're going to be looking for. 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note there as well. More of that on the way. Let's get a word from Lord Robertson, former Conservative Armed Forces Minister. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Nice to have you with us. Let's start, obviously, with this latest news from Donald Trump. Let's have a listen to him in action before we talk. Talking on that issue specifically of the Strait of Hormuz blockade. Here he is.
I would say it's holding well. Their military is destroyed. Their whole Navy is underwater. You know that. 158 ships are gone. Their Navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil, and that will be very effective. But what we want to do is we want to, and again, we don't need this. What we notice and what we see and what I think is maybe my idea, maybe not, I don't know. But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait.
That's what Mr. Trump said. And this was Mr. Starmer talking on discussions with the US President, Andrew, on the Strait of Hormuz.
We spent most of the time on the call talking about the practical plan that's going to be needed to get navigation through the Strait, and the role that the UK is playing. For a couple of weeks now, we've been pulling together a coalition of countries, now over 30 countries, working on a political and diplomatic plan, but also looking at military capabilities and actually the logistics of actually moving vessels through the Strait.
Well, I'm slightly confused, Andrew, on this. Keir Starmer last week with blaze and glory set out for the Middle East on a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Well, he went to Saudi Arabia at least, pressed the flesh, and then came home again. Was anything achieved by that at all? Because now we have Donald Trump saying, no, this is how we're playing it. We didn't get the deal we wanted. J.D. Vance took it down to the wire. The Iranians wouldn't accept it, and now we're closing the Strait of Hormuz. That's it. What did Starmer achieve in all of this?
Well, I don't think Starmer achieved anything very much. The broader issue is really worrying, the embarrassment to this country by Starmer leading us. I find it all very depressing. He's useless, he's embarrassing, and he doesn't know what he's talking about, frankly.
Yes, and I think that last point is quite key to this, isn't it? I'd also add into that I don't think it's in his political DNA to be that engaged with something like this.
No, I don't think it is. He saw himself as a manager, I think, and when we need a leader, and he's not even managing well. As things get more and more difficult, he's seeming more and more absurd, frankly. I find it embarrassing for us. I find it embarrassing for him.
Yep.
And I'm frankly rather embarrassed for the country.
So off he goes to the Middle East. J.D. Vance, as Starmer leaves the region, J.D. Vance arrives for these sort of peace talks in Pakistan to try and attempt to get some kind of solution. It doesn't come to anything significantly, but enough for the Americans to say, we are closing the Strait of Hormuz. My confusion on this, Andrew, is simple, really. I thought the whole deal was to get the thing open.
I thought it was too. I'm not involved in any politics here. I thought it was done. Obviously, it needs to be thought through more carefully. I would have thought that the USA could deploy minesweepers and could clear the strait, helped perhaps by UK ships, but it isn't happening at the moment. And frankly, I just find the whole thing embarrassing. I find it embarrassing to be British. I find it embarrassing to be part of the UK government, not UK government, but part of the UK politics.
Yeah. Do you think Trump is onto something here, though? Because we know he's unconventional. He doesn't tick every box. He's not everybody's cup of tea and flavour of the month. But sometimes, you know, his big unconventional way of doing things does sort of work. Could this be the moment where there is some kind of victory for the rest of the world over Iran, if we look at it like that? He closes the strait. Iran have nothing to gain from it any longer because they can't, because he's closed it. Has Trump gone in the right direction here?
I think Trump is not entirely wrong, let's put it that way. He could have the straits closed. I think he'd open them up as well, but let's just get this straight. I understand it's 22 miles across, which is about the same size as the British Channel, I understand. So I think that could be open. But I don't have the details to hand to tell you what could happen. But I do think that we should support the United States as far as possible, because actually it's rather embarrassing not to.
Yeah, well, and Starmer has said he's not. Yes, Starmer says he's not going to join the blockade, but he'll send some minesweepers in afterwards. To which, as I understand it, Mr. Trump came back with the same answer that he's come up before. We don't need you afterwards. We need you now. Sure,
that's true. Actually, it's pretty embarrassing actually that we can't have minesweepers there in the first place. But that's because the Royal Navy has been shrunk to the extent it has been shrunk.
Yeah, indeed. Andrew, thank you for your time. Lord Andrew Robertson, former Conservative Armed Forces Minister, thank you to him. It has been, I don't know what you'd send there anyway. I don't say this in fairness to Starmer, but I don't know significantly what you could send. The minesweeper thing is quite key and crucial. Obviously, you don't know what the Iranians have bunged down there. Of course you don't. But it's the it's the mood music, isn't it, with Starmer? It's the mood music and that diluting of our relationship with America that is key to all of this, which is dropping like a stone by the hour at the moment. It's embarrassing. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word from Heather, who's in Ayrshire. Heather, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Good morning.
Well, morning, rather. Yeah, did I say afternoon? It's the first time I've done it. Yeah, I'm as good as gold at this end. What's going on?
Well, I've had a feeling about this peace deal in Islamabad. I knew it ain't going to go to fruition with this peace whatsoever, and because you cannot deal with characters like the Iranian regime whatsoever, because like they're so dogmatic in their approach, and they want to own everything. They want to be in power, this regime. They've been in power for over 40 years. Are they going to give up willingly?
Well, indeed. I mean, but J.D. Vance going there? I mean, it took Thatcher and the British government, decades to sit down with the IRA. And there was J.D. Vance sitting around a table, all of them all suited, carving out a peace deal with the most horrendous and lethal Islamist organisation on planet Earth. Did that was that entire attempt, do you think, Heather, legitimising Iran?
We all know for a fact that peace treaties do take a lot of patience.
But this happened in about half an hour, didn't it? This happened really quickly. Suddenly, you know, there was a load of bombing, and now there's a sort of peace deal. The very people that Donald Trump wanted to eradicate from planet Earth are sitting around a table, drinking the water and eating apples.
I know it sounds bonkers when you look at it.
I mean, maybe it's the only way. I'm not suggesting I've got a great alternative, but it's curious that there was so much made of we've got to get the regime changed. And then they said, well, we've changed the regime, but they hadn't really changed the regime. So there's the very people that you needed to eradicate, and bearing in mind, it's not just a people you're getting rid of, it's a complete ideology. You're trying to get rid of political Islamism, the greatest state sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth, and has widely been responsible for all ills in the Middle East. And there they are, half an hour later, breaking bread together.
I know, because, like, even though the head of the mullah is dead, and his son's still in a coma, apparently, who's in charge of the regime?
Well, the son, who is apparently, he was blown to smithereens anyway. He's currently dying by instalments. I don't know what's happening there, but there's about 8 of him laid somewhere in a hospital bed in Tehran. We will watch with interest. Heather, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Over to you with more comments. Wide range of stuff. You see, this is what we do on Talk, the home of common sense. We've got the light-hearted stuff. We've got the serious stuff. There is an underpinning of seriousness, of course, in everything that happens as a result of this government, including what's happening to school dinners and fish and chips. Morning, Jay.
Morning. Fantastic show as always. So, banning sausage rolls and fish and chips across the schools. Now, is this a health reason? Because a good bit of fish is loaded with omega-3. I mean, obviously, if it's fried to the death, it's not going to be good for you, but people have ate this for generations. This is British tradition in all British countries. So, is this another thing that's being taken away from the British tradition? Or is this actually to help people? Because if it is, just take all the desserts off the menu and replace everything with fruit.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of commerce. Did you see Tommy in the shot there, just briefly? He'll be invoicing for that, don't you worry. 0344 499 1000. You can message 87222. Lots to get through. Chris in Lanc says, morning Ian, when I was a kid, I ate all the fatty stuff, went to the ice cream van at lunchtime, like your speaker did, and I was like a rake. Why? Because there was no game consoles. We simply played outside from morning till night time. We were active, playing football, climbing trees, playing hide and seek, rode our bikes everywhere. Sadly, kids stay in their bedrooms with their curtains drawn, alone, chatting online. Sad, isn't it? That is absolutely bang on. Because do you remember that, like in the summer as well, going out and playing football and monkeying around, and you couldn't wait to go to get a glass of water. You'd run in, Mum, can I have another half an hour? You know, all of that stuff, and out you'd go again. It was literally non-stop. It was a horrific thought of staying indoors. There was nothing to stay in for. There was nothing to do. unless you wanted to watch Crossroads on TV, stuff you did after school involved, in an ideal world, going out. It was that simple. Lots of big stories around at the moment. The world of politics doesn't stop for anybody. Let's speak with Andrew Griffith, MP, Shadow Business Secretary. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lots to talk about here. Worth getting a word if we could. I mentioned fish and chips. I mean, I didn't know when I came into work this morning that fish and chips was going to be such a big subject, but it's absolutely sent our screens and our callers wild on this, namely because it's the Labour government telling us again what kids can and cannot eat at school. Not, oh, maybe we'll just limit fish and chips to once a week or once every 2 weeks, but they're banning them.
Well, I mean, this is a government that loves banning things. Fish and chips is a fantastic British food, never did me any harm. Obviously, our fishing industry is one of our great industries before Starmer handed over our fishing rights to Brussels for another 12 years as one of the first things that he did. Yeah. And, you know, governments, you'd think they would be fixing the NHS. You'd think they'd be dealing with some of the big global crises we've got and doing things to help with the cost of living. But no, they love just diving in, banning things, telling us all how to live our lives, how to do our jobs when they're not very good at doing theirs. Yeah, a few people have mentioned that maybe it's actually a cost-cutting thing because the price of fish and chips are off the scale at the moment. So maybe it's financial rather than health. Yeah, well, it's, you know, this government's got the economics of a Soviet tractor factory, hasn't it? I mean, they'll be driving up the costs of everything. You know, I've been talking to businesses. That's my job as business secretary. Oh, my goodness me. I mean, we've got April Armageddon. All of these new employment red tape has hit. They've driven up the cost of hiring anyone through national insurance. People's energy costs are through the roof. And look, I don't believe in a massive sort of state bailout. The truth is there isn't the money. Governments in the past have built up huge debts, but they could jolly well stop digging, stop piling on more red tape, stop jacking up people's business rates, stop piling costs on. That would help business, but it would help all of us because we all end up paying the price at the petrol pump or in our shopping basket. I mean, on that point of business, we're in perilous times, of course, when it comes to the cost of living and particularly with the oil shortage. I mean, there should be no oil shortage because we literally have loads of it on our own doorstep. Ed Miliband is not enamoured by that. For some reason, he's given some bizarre autonomy on this because we all know Keir Starmer could make this decision about the North Sea. We know what's happening in Iran. That could get a whole lot worse before it gets better. The Strait is now officially closed by the Americans, so nothing's coming through anytime soon. What is the deal here with this North Sea thing? Because it should be rather simple. Even if you're Ed Miliband, you would look at this, who's probably sitting somewhere and still dreaming of more panels and windmills and sort of evangelise this whole area. He left largely alone to do his thing. And no one's shouting at him saying, Ed, get your act together, mate. We've got oil. Let's make it happen. It's complete nuts. Look, we've got this trillions of barrels of oil and gas under our feet. Importing that from anyone else will simply be less secure, and actually it will cost more in terms of the financial price and even the cost of those emissions, because you've also got to pay more to bring it here. So it is properly nuts. Now, Parliament's been away for a couple of weeks. It's back today. Starmer should be putting his hand on the back of Ed Miliband saying, get yourself down to Parliament, announce that we'll be licensing Jackdaw and Rosebank, two of these big opportunity fields, relieving the burden of tax on exploration so that all of these great companies, energy companies, two of which are fantastically successful British companies, BP and Shell, are actually devoting their time and energy helping British security rather than going and building businesses for other people around the world. You know what? The same for our food. Why are we not focusing more on self-sufficiency of food instead of piling up more and more solar farms on good British farmland? And of course, we have more bureaucracy in the last couple of years for small businesses and more taxation as well. I mean, are the Conservatives going to reverse all of this if you happen to win the election in 2029? Well, I can be categoric because we've already announced that we are going to reverse almost all of the measures in Labour's job-destroying unemployment bill. So removing all of that red tape that they've piled on businesses that is costing people's jobs. We'll go further. We will reform business rates to take 250,000 businesses out of business rates entirely, and I hope we can go further over time. And the reason this is credible, because I'm fed up as a business person of politicians just saying this, is we uniquely are willing to make the tough choices on welfare. We have been very clear. We're on the side of the high street, not on the side of Benefit Street. We will reform the way that people get sign off to be on benefits for life. We opposed the removal of the second child cap. You know, if you're an ordinary employee at work, you don't get a pay rise just because you've had another child. Why should that be true of the welfare and benefit system? We don't support all this idea of piling on more and more discounts. So if you are a hardworking family trying to visit the Tower of London or another visit attraction, you have to pay full freight, and somebody on benefits gets a very discounted option. All of this has to change, and the changed Conservative Party is deadly serious about doing this. Why? Because we need to put money into the armed forces. We need to remove the yoke, the burden on small businesses that is crushing them, and we need to reduce the cost of living, a lot of which is made up of the cost of taxes and red tape.
You won't have to worry about red tape, of course, because that will be the EU's problem, it seems, Andrew, because Keir Starmer is, by instalments, taking us back into certainly business and trading arrangements, and new legislation, once a trade deal has been struck, will mean that any further rules and regs will not be voted on by you guys. They can just rubber stamp it. What do you say to that?
Well, anyone, whatever your view, should be the believer that Parliament is the body that should make these decisions. We shouldn't be outsourcing them to Brussels, the low or slow growth EU. We're an agile economy. We can once again be one of the most prosperous countries on the planet, but we need to be setting our own rules. No one says to Canada, the thing you need to do, even though you trade a lot with the United States, share a land border, share a language, is take powers away from the Canadian Parliament and hand them over to US Congress. That is exactly what Starmer is proposing for the British Parliament. I think it's wrong. Conservatives think it's wrong. We will reverse that. We do not support that.
Do you sense, and this may sound like a stupid question, Andrew, that Mr. Starmer is instinctively and purposely taking us back into the EU in all but name? Is that the route plan for this government?
In a word, because then I'll have to go, yes, he is. I mean, this is someone who tried to overturn the referendum, the view of the British people. He's never been happy with British sovereignty on these matters. He's not to be trusted. The day cannot come quickly enough when we get rid of this wretched government.
Andrew, thank you for your time. Andrew Griffith, MP, Shadow Business Secretary. It can't come quick enough. Well, I think a lot of people would absolutely echo that point. Get in the bin, Prime Minister, are the chants from a lot of Brits out there right now on various reasons. It could be Iran. It could be the destruction of our relationship with the United States. Let's speak to Nigel down in London, who knows a bit about this, Nigel, because you've lived for nearly half a century in America, but also live here as well. Your thoughts on this? Morning.
Good morning to you. Well, I sincerely hope, as I was saying to your cool gentleman who took my answer my telephone call, I hope America dumps us completely. At the end of the day, we have to understand, which I don't think we actually do understand, that we need America more than America needs us. And if we're sticking two fingers up to the United States and we're asking for help, or they're asking for help and we're not going to give it, well, what sort of special relationship is it? And all my American friends and neighbours have really distanced themselves from this country completely.
Is that right? So so this isn't just sort of Trump talking. There is a sense that on the ground in America, that is a view that you're hearing from Americans, that, you know, you used to be our best ally, our best mates. You had our back, we had yours.
Yeah, and I think we have to clearly also understand, which we, again, Ian, don't understand in this country, is that Americans are for America and for the benefits of the United States, not for the benefits of anybody else. It's America first. And when you've got countries who don't want to help America, yet they're supposed to be a special relationship, well, then what does a special relationship mean? I mean, what's that about? Tourism? War, business, what is it? You know, we've already got one US company pulled out of here last week because it's too expensive to invest in this country because of energy costs. So in reality, I think we have to be very, very careful for what Keir Starmer wishes for, because once a relationship is broken, it's not very easy to re-establish.
Has it been reasonably broken by this current government? Starmer's position, it might seem ridiculous, it might seem unhelpful and ultimately destructive, but his position was, I don't want to be involved in a war. That's ultimately what this chapter of the relationship breakdown is all about. I mean, if you're a Labour voter, or you feel like we got our hands royally burnt over Iraq or Afghanistan, you might say, yeah, good for him.
Well, we don't want to be involved in a war, but we're involved in a war with Ukraine, aren't we? So what's the difference?
Well, Ukraine is European soil.
Well, it is European. It is European. So you're quite right. But we aren't in Europe, are we? We
are in Europe, not in the EU.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's our continent, as it were, quite close to home.
Well, we're an island next to a continent, but I think we have to bear in mind.
Yeah, no, I'm not advocating that position. I'm saying that's the argument that is forthcoming.
But I think supplying weapons to Ukraine and helping those poor people there who are being bombarded on a regular basis, having civilians killed, also takes us into a conflict where if the Russians were to strike the United Kingdom, which is not too difficult, how can we defend ourselves?
Where does it go? Where does it go from here, Nigel? I mean, it seems to me, and I said this earlier on to a guest, that I can imagine Keir Starmer, come the next election, advocating for a full re-entry into the EU, in part because I don't think he's got anywhere else to go.
Well, I sincerely hope he doesn't, because that would be a complete breakdown of democracy. I think what Keir Starmer needs to do is sit down, speak to a few people and try and reset the relationship. The difficulty that Keir Starmer has, from my point of view, and I think a lot of people are going to agree with me, he's not a great statesman, he's not a great communicator, and he doesn't look good on the world stage. He fumbles. Whatever he does, he fumbles. Well,
he's not a good, objectively, demonstrably, he's just not a good Prime Minister, right? I mean, there's loads of Labour voters that want him gone. I appreciate that what could replace him may even be worse, but he's not good at being a Prime Minister.
He has no charisma and he has no leadership skills.
Yeah.
He's done 16 U-turns. Maybe he should be the Minister for Transport and rewrite the highway code, because he's no good at leading the country.
Yeah, it could be that. We'll watch with interest. Nigel, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's talk to Chris in Epsom. Chris, what have you got for us? Morning.
Morning, Ian. I did call in quite early. I wanted to put a question to
Matt.
Jedrick. Yeah, but the thing is that it's okay. First of all, leaving the ECHR, that takes 6 months. All right, you've got to tell them you're going to leave, and it takes 6 months. But just doing that's not enough. You've got to repeal the Bill of Rights, which brought it into law. Now, what a lot of people don't realise, and this is going to sound, I suppose it's going to sound a bit extreme right when you first hear it, but it's not. It's in 1948, up until 1948, you could only become an MP, a judge, or hold office in this country if both your parents were UK born. A bit like America, you can't be president if you're not born in America.
Yeah.
Now, I believe that with the amount of immigration that we've got, the problems we've got with our culture disappearing because the people that are gaining power, we're getting activist judges, activist councillors, activist MPs. I mean, for God's sake, we've got...
What's an activist judge, Chris?
Sorry?
What's an activist judge?
An activist judge, well, if you look at the ECHR, Section 8, the right to a private life, the right to a family life, right? There are several get-out clauses in that, which include you're a danger to the public. You're actually there's one there that's even if you're economically unsound, right? you're not economically viable for the UK.
But that wouldn't just be a. They wouldn't go, right, you've got a right to a family life, but you're not economically viable, so you're going. I mean, it's not a straight.
No, that's right. But Ian,
that's not literally what a judge would look at. I know that much. And these judges haven't just appeared in the last 24 months, right? I mean, judges are judges, and most of them are, as far as. We spoke to a woman not that long ago, said she'd worked in courts forever. They're all mad old, right-wing Tories judges.
No, they're not. That's not true. If you go back and listen to Lord Pearson, in the 80s, Lord Pearson, in the early 80s, just before Maggie got out of office, Pearson went to her and told her that there was a problem in our education system, that it was being infiltrated by left-wing ideology, and that it needed to be dealt with so that people got a fair education on all sides. So she said she would make him, all right, in charge of education. Now, unfortunately, she then actually went off the rails a bit with the poll tax, and she was removed. And Major came in, and when Pearson took the same argument to Major, he didn't want to take on the trade unions, the teachers' trade unions.
Sure.
And if you look now, and he's done a recent interview about 18 months ago, Pearson, about this. If you look now, everything, right? Where you look at the seats of learning from secondary schools to even our top universities, of which we have 4 of the top universities, 10 top universities in the world. All of the teachings there are ideological. You have the largest union, which is now not the National Union of Teachers. It's called something else. NUH is it? The Teachers Union.
NUT.
It used to be, but it's not.
Oh,
anymore.
they've changed their name, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same mob.
Yeah.
Now,
but have teachers ever been anything but left wing, on balance?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember going into schools in the late 70s, early 80s. My family business, we did all the schools and colleges in London for machines, and I remember the teachers wearing Free Ireland badges or whatever. That was the left ideology in those days. The thing is that they're now against the law, which is against the law. They actually, at their general meeting, looked at ways that they could bring Gaza into the classroom.
Well, not literally bring Gaza into the... that would be something. What's that in the playground? Oh, it's Gaza. But the teachings from a pro-Palestinian perspective, I get that. I get it. Chris, I've got to move for time. Thank you. Chris in Epsom, over to you. 0344 499 1000. We've got more notes and more comments to come. Let's talk more back to schools, but school dinners. Morning to you, Phil.
Yeah, morning, Ian. It's Phil from Durban again. Yes, I'm a product of the 60s or late 60s, being educated in a wonderful, salubrious place called West Bromwich. And I remember it well. If you survive the headmaster's cane or the flying boardroom rubber, or having your hand destroyed by a 6-man engineer's hammer for having your hands on the bench in metalwork, you then had to survive the school dinners. Now, they were actually served in like an aluminium can. I was quite lucky because I was house captain, so I could dole this out to my lower graded pupils. I kept most of it myself and gave them a paltry amount. It's just a pity that he of the bacon sandwich eater, Herr Miliband, hasn't learned how to eat a bacon sandwich, let alone cook one. Goodbye, Ian. Lovely day. Great show.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, it's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on Talk Breakfast for a couple of weeks. It's absolutely rammed to the gills at this end. I don't know what's happened. It's a Monday morning. I know Mondays are always, we've got the weekend of stuff that's gone on. This news agenda this morning is absolutely crammed. We've got Keir Starmer refusing to join Donald Trump's blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. What a surprise. That special relationship goes down the Swanee yet again. Nigel Farage calling for an immigration inquiry. Should, of course, they come into power. He's pointing the finger specifically at Boris Johnson. Does this country need an immigration inquiry? I mean, I would argue we don't need an inquiry, we just need action. But Mr Farage is making the not unreasonable point that the Boris wave of immigration has cost British households, 20,000 quid each. Every household, due to the 1.6 million people who've moved to the UK under Boris Johnson and his successors. Your calls and comments on that, 0344 499 1000. We've also got another Brexit betrayal. It's Brexit betrayal, chapter 722 from Keir Starmer. They're being accused, of course, of, well, it's your classic. They're going to carve out a trade deal with the EU, and then any further rule changes will not have to be put to Parliament. There won't be a vote by British MPs. It will just be rubber stamped. Is this the Prime Minister moving us back into the EU by dubious instalments? And we're talking fish and chips and all stuff school-related, it seems. Fish and chips is coming off the menu in schools. Bad for the little ones. Not good to have all that batter. But is there more to this? Some have said this is a religious thing. This is about religion, not about the fish. Others have argued it's the cost of the oil rather than the fish. Some people have made that conclusion as well. 0344 Graham, in fact, says the banning of fish and chips is nothing to do with health. It's to do with with cost and not the price of fish. It's the oil for frying that is more expensive. Is that right? Just chuck a bit of old castrol in there, can't you? You still get a nice battered fish. Oh, it's a little bit manky on the aftertaste, but it'll do the job. 034, and it'll fire the kids up as well. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. More to come after the news at 8 o'clock. You're listening to Talk. Let's get the latest headlines at 8.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Talk Breakfast. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for the next couple of weeks. Nothing changes in terms of the content. Absolutely full to the brim of incredible subjects out there this morning. After Donald Trump, Keir Starmer, that relationship is going down the pan even further. As we speak, you can almost measure it by the minute. How do we get that one back? No surprise then that Keir Starmer seems to be hot-footing it yet again to the EU, saying, yeah, we'd love a trade deal. We'd like to get all that. You can have the, yeah, we'll take the rules. Don't worry. We'll do all the rules. We'll rubber stamp them. In fact, our MPs won't even have to vote on the rules. We'll just give it the green light at this end. Wink, wink. Don't worry. This is a man on manoeuvres. This is a man who will take us back into the EU if he carries on in power. I don't actually think, if you got him on a quiet day, I don't think he'd even deny that, to be honest. Thoughts on that? Immigration. Do we need an immigration inquiry? Nigel Farage thinks we do. He's pointing the finger squarely at Boris Johnson and the huge rise in immigration from the Boris wave from 2019. And interesting, the one that's really grabbed everyone's attention are school days, particularly fish and chips and what goes on the school menu, coupled with subjects that... is metalwork still a thing, by the way? Do we still do... Is that still a thing, making a little tea caddy spoon in metalwork? Allowing 11-year-olds to sit there essentially with a furnace and a welding mask? They were great days. I don't know what we gained from metalwork. I mean, the woodwork thing I could kind of see a little clearer. Metalwork was just a... I honestly, I don't know. I'd love to have a great answer and go, this is why we did it. It's a bit like, you know, when somebody explains why you do algebra at school. You go, well, we don't need algebra at school. Who's going to use algebra? And the teacher goes, it's not about knowing, you know, y x over y divided by mc squared. It's not specifically that. It's about getting your brain working in a certain way. OK, I get it. Making a tea caddy spoon in metalwork. What's that doing to my brain? I have never, as a grown adult, had to make a tea caddy spoon. I've never owned a tea caddy. I've never even had to buy one, let alone make the darn thing. What was the overarching purpose of that? Does it still happen? It used to be a divide. Boys did metalwork and woodwork. Girls did needlework and cookery. I mean, you couldn't really get a more kind of sexist example of what education once was. And this isn't in the 1950s. This is in the mid-80s, for goodness sake. 0344 499 1000. The reason we got onto that was because of fish and chips. Fish and chips coming off the school menu. This has upset many, many people. Why are the government doing this? Is there a specific purpose? Linda in Stalybridge says, when I went to school in the 60s, most schools had fish on Fridays. It was part of a Christian tradition of eating fish, especially in Catholic schools. I would assume private schools can still do their own thing. When it comes to fish, this one comes in from Clive, who says, banning fish in schools, it seems to me that there is an anti-Christian element to this. It's a Christian tradition to have fish on a Friday as a... is that a penitential... I can't even say... Penitential measure? Penitential. It's a penitential measure. I got word blindness here. A form of fasting. Got it. So there's been pressure to wipe out more of our Christian heritage, I wonder. Keep up the good work. Talk Britain needs you saying it how it is, even if I can't pronounce words. Clive, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a word from Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK. Morning to you, Ben.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, I mentioned at the beginning, this is right in the target of everything that gets you out of bed in the morning, makes you angry and keeps you going. Keir Starmer and his latest dalliance with the EU. Don't worry, Governor, about the small print. We'll just wave it through. What is going on?
Well, you might recall, Ian, that when Keir Starmer was in Montreal in September 2023 at a conference, he thought the cameras were off him, and they weren't. And he disclosed to the gathering that if he were to ever become Prime Minister, he would align us so closely with the European Union that we might as well be members. And that's what he's doing. He's doing it at every single level. He's taking us into alignment on agricultural regulations. He's taking us into their carbon trading system, then their drive to net zero based on how much carbon each product that crosses our border contains, and penalties that we would need to pay if they exceed certain carbon levels. He's taking our military into the European Defence Union, which is not like NATO. They like to claim it's a bit like NATO, but it's not. It's effectively interoperable military with Brussels in charge. So our military will be potentially reporting one day to German, French, or Dutch or Belgian generals. Quite an extraordinary thing. We will not have control of our own military. He's taken us into this youth mobility scheme, which is effectively freedom of movement for so-called younger people. But how do you define young? Maybe at some point they'll move the age limit up, and before you know it, we're heading full tilt back to freedom of movement. He's doing it at every single level. And this latest move is effectively giving Parliament the right, or the government the right, rather, to deliver into UK law automatically new EU regulations as they're drafted without having to discuss them in Parliament. This is effectively being a member of the European Union. We will have a foreign institution, foreign parliament, making laws that we will be taking onto our statute books, and it'll be the European Court of Justice which will determine whether or not we're complying with them. So we'll have a foreign court as well, determining whether the United Kingdom is complying with its obligations to the EU. But the last thing I just want to quickly say on this, Ian, is that if we actually properly left the EU in 2019, when Boris Johnson said he would get that to 2020, when he said he would get Brexit done, we didn't leave then properly. That's why all of this is possible. We left Northern Ireland behind. Northern Ireland has been a rule taker in 300 areas of EU law ever since then, which has acted as a grappling hook also into Great Britain. We've been obliged to comply with their state aid regulation, competition regulation. We can't buy British first. We've never been able to. Employment regulations, and of course the daft net zero policy. We've never really got out of that wretched institution. We're coming up to 10 years of having voted to leave the EU, and we're still not out, but we're rapidly heading into closer alignment with them.
And you know what, Ben? I'd actually argue that it's even worse than everything you've just said for this particular reason. We have to remember that the Ursula von der Leyens, the Macrons, the Merzes of this world pathologically hate us.
Absolutely.
And they hate us because of what happened in 2016. It's personal to these people. They don't think of a trading bloc. They think of it as a big, harmonious, curious, hybrid family of all us EU citizens. So the fact that we legged it means it's punishment time. So anything that Starmer does get from the EU, even by his own standards, Ben, will be the worst of all scenarios.
It absolutely will be. And you hear with this effort to align our militaries, as he puts it, which is effectively handing over control of our military. Not only is he giving over control of the biggest military in Europe to Europe, as depleted as we are, we're still the biggest military. He's actually going to pay money across for the privilege of doing so. And he's had to do the same on the agri-goods alignment that he's signing us up to. Everything that he wishes to do, they would take their pound of flesh beyond it.
Yeah.
And everything he wishes to do is bad for this country. It's going to cost our farmers millions and millions when we go into alignment with EU regulations on farming, because they will ban pesticides, for example, that our farmers need to use. They will tell us how to farm our land. Our farmers are already suffering. They've been hit repeatedly by the increased cost of fertilizers, increased cost of pesticides, all through net zero. And then, of course, IHT has been levied on them. Supermarkets take them to the cleaners. And now he's going to foist an even bigger bill on our farmers. Starmer is anti-British. He is genuinely anti-British. You mentioned Macron and other leaders in Europe hating us. Starmer hates us. Starmer doesn't like this country. He has this vision. He shares this vision with these other European leaders that we should be one big nation state. The UK should cease to exist and the EU should be one nation state.
Yeah, and he's in that almost that perpetual self-flagellating position of, you know, Britain back in the day, you know, Royal Britannia and all of that. People like Starmer and Hermer and that crowd, they hate that about this country.
They do. They hate it.
It absolutely drives them insane. I mean, Chagos is mostly about that, isn't it? The mere idea that a Union flag flies above a sunny island somewhere across the world absolutely destroys their souls. And that's ultimately where they're coming from on this. They don't like the idea of Great Britain. They like the idea of Britain being part of this little jigsaw puzzle of EU members.
There are 4 Chagosians who've gone back to Chagos, including a brilliant chap called Maisley Mandarin, who has been spearheading the fight for the cancellation of that trade deal with, not trade deal, the handing over of Chagos to Mauritius. He's been spearheading that. He's gone back to Chagos with 3 other Chagosians. And this weekend, I don't know if you saw this, but supplies were being delivered to them. The government sent out, at the cost of hundreds of thousands of pounds, a British border force boat to intercept those supplies so that he couldn't receive sustenance on Chagos. That's how much they hate him. We can't stop dinghies in the channel. They won't do their job here.
Yeah.
But they'll spend hundreds of thousands to prevent a perfectly legal action against this wretched giveaway of the Chagos Islands.
I mean, you can't make the idea that they managed an intervention by boats on water is just, I mean, it's almost like they're taking the pee now, isn't it?
It is. But, you know, one thing I want to mention, I try to mention it every time people discuss Chagos. We mustn't forget Gibraltar, which has been part of, or had been part of, the United Kingdom since 1713, under a treaty after the War of the Spanish Succession. The Spanish gave it over to us in perpetuity. And Starmer has handed Gibraltar back to the European Union. If you fly into Gibraltar, you come to EU immigration before you come to British immigration. It's in EU control. Gibraltar, for its 2.3 square miles, is of massive strategic importance to this country. It saw us through the Napoleonic Wars, the First World War, the Second World War. If we wanted to get HMS Dragon quickly out to Cyprus, not that we could do it, it would seem it's impossible for us to do anything efficiently. But if we had Gibraltar, it's a week closer to Cyprus than it now will be.
Yeah.
And Gibraltar's been handed away, and no one seems to give a damn. And it's deeply distressing for people who actually do believe in this country, who love this country, love the flag, as you were discussing, and want this country to do well. But they don't care. They see themselves as being part of this web of European countries governed by Brussels. That's how they see, that's their vision, that's their ideology. And they were to hang our history, hang the greatness of this country, hang our past, hang our language, hang our culture. To hell with all of that. That's where they're heading.
Final point on a different issue. Your old former friend, Nigel Farage, says he is looking at an immigration inquiry and will force Boris Johnson to testify under oath, should they have one, mainly because he's responsible for so much after that Boris wave of immigration. And Mr Farage claims that this is costing every British household £20,000 due to the 1.6 million people who moved to the UK under Boris and successive leaders. Do you back Mr Farage, Ben?
I think the principle of holding Boris Johnson and his colleagues to account is the right one. An inquiry is completely the wrong approach. An inquiry, as you and I know, and I think all viewers will agree, will take years to conduct, will cost hundreds of millions of pounds. They'll produce a 400- or 500-page document that no one will read, which will have no actionable conclusions in it. It's a waste of time. If we believe wrong has been committed, then Boris Johnson should be arrested. He should be investigated, and if there's a charge to be brought, he should be arrested and then questioned under caution, and he should have the book thrown at him. An inquiry is a waste of time. But what Farage should be doing as a leader of a political party, which Advance UK, by the way, would do if it were to make it into government, is to reverse the granting of indefinite leave to remain to anyone that's been granted it since 2019, and make sure that no one gets to stay and cancel indefinite leave to remain as a program, and make sure that the Boris wave effectively goes home. That's the real solution here. Not to take Boris Johnson to court necessarily. Do that if you want, but reverse the damage that he did.
Ben, you said Boris Johnson should be arrested. What would the charge be? That's quite a big statement.
Well, the point of the inquiry is to determine whether or not Boris Johnson was guilty of wrongdoing. If he's guilty of wrongdoing, you don't need an inquiry to determine that.
But that wouldn't be illegal. I'm not defending Boris Johnson, the ineptitude of Boris I could talk about forever. But would it be illegal in that sense that you could be arrested and sent to jail?
Well, it's highly unlikely. This is why I think the inquiry is pointless, and I prefer policies to be made to reverse the damage done by Boris Johnson. It's highly unlikely that anyone would find a former Prime Minister guilty of negligence, which effectively is what Farage is accusing him of. Yep. You know, gross negligence, a breach of fiduciary duty, a breach of his obligations to the British people. Highly unlikely that that will find favour in any court. But if you are going to go down that route, don't waste money on an inquiry which won't produce any conclusions. Just put the police on him.
OK. Ben, on that point, lovely to see you again. Thank you for coming on. Ben Habib, he's the leader of Advance UK, with us on the programme. Over to you on all of that. Your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Do you know what? There's a wider point. Whatever Ben's belief on Boris Johnson getting arrested if he'd done something wrong. Doing something wrong doesn't necessarily mean you've done something illegal. I think it would be extraordinary if he was ever arrested, but many people would like to see it for all manner of reasons, for that matter, perhaps. But if politicians were faced with graver consequences for their ineptitude or their actions, other than just, I might lose my job in 5 years' time, if there was something a little more urgent and instant about how, like you would in any other job, in any other world, if you put a foot wrong, if you accidentally invited 1.6 million people into the country, you might think somebody would, HR at Westminster would go, oh, Prime, can we have a word with you? We've just been looking through the books. It appears you inadvertently allowed 1.6 million people to come into the country. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry? Get in the bin, Boris. That's not going to cut it. Sorry. It's 1.6 million people, not 1.6 people. Just over 1.5. It's 1.6. If there was a consequence for that level of heady ineptitude, for people getting it so badly wrong, maybe we would get a better class of politician. Maybe. 0344 499 1000. We got everything going on here. We are talking about Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is closed by the Americans, not the Iranians, and we're not doing anything to help it. We're talking about immigration, and we're talking about fish and chips banned from school dinners. Let's get a voice note. Morning, Judith.
Hello, it's Judy from Altoffs, West Yorkshire. I'm a child of the 50s, and I had school dinners, and I thought they were lovely. You didn't have a menu. You had the one thing. It were a meat, mashed potatoes, boiled potatoes, and veg, and you didn't have a choice. That were it, and one pudding. That were it. No choices.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Some great calls and comments coming in here. 23 minutes after 8 o'clock. Mike in Cheshire says, Ian, our options in 1981 for our O-level woodwork project was to make a coffee table or a crossbow. My parents wouldn't let me make the crossbow, but I still have the coffee table in my dad's house. Thank goodness for that. That could have been a whole different text. That could have been Mike from Parkhurst. Well, we were talking earlier about the stuff you did at school, like in metalwork. And sometimes it happened in artwork as well, in art, where they'd say, right, today we're going to make an ashtray out of clay. Or just an ashtray. We're 12 while we're making ashtrays. Carl in Derbyshire says, to be honest, Ian, fish and chips hasn't been our national dish for a long time. That's true. I think curry has overtaken fish and chips. Gary says, in my days, boys did metalwork, girls did needlework and cooking. It's not sexist, it's the way it was. Indeed. Try selling that today. Mike makes this point. I love metalwork and woodwork. I made a poker for the fire, a tapered point, a twist in the middle, and a handle and a hook ring. I still have it. Yeah, but do you have a fire, Mike? I mean, I think there's the wider question. It's a lovely thing to say. It's a nice little memory of that stuff. I think I've got a tray somewhere that I made in woodwork. They would try to get you to make it like an abstract thing on the first thing, which was meant to use all the... So it was like a kind of block, a rectangle block of wood. You drilled a hole in the middle, you cut a bit out, you chiselled another bit out. So you used all the tools to make it. It served no purpose whatsoever beyond that. I quite liked woodwork. Metalwork, couldn't quite get my head around that. A key holder. Oh, a key holder. Well, didn't that could cross both metalwork and woodwork? You could start it in woodwork and finish it in metalwork with your hooks. Everybody does mechanics, says Arena. Woodwork and cookery at our school. So you do woodwork, cookery and mechanics. That seems a bit more logical. I like the cookery thing. I think the art of cooking is something that could easily be lost with the amount of ready meals that you can get. Let's move on and talk about what is going on in Hungary right now. They've had a big election and the man who's been there for 16 years is about to be booted out of office. Samara Gill, Talk Breakfast reporter, is with us. Afternoon, or morning, I should say, Samara. Nice to have you with us. Listen, I mean, this is big. It's significant for many reasons. It's significant for Russia. It's significant for the EU. It's significant for America. Arguably significant for general right-wing politics.
Yes, massively. I almost feel a little trepidatious bringing this sort of story to, Talk Breakfast show, because we are very Britain-centric in a good way. This is the country we should care about. But I penned a piece for an Australian newspaper over the weekend about this, and I think it is really interesting. Is this the beginning of the end for Trump-style politics in Europe? You know, is this going to have a ripple effect on potentially the popularity of someone like a Nigel Farage in our elections? And I think yes. When you look at Viktor Orban, he was this right-wing Hungarian poster boy for populist nationalism in Europe. He had 16 years in power, and now he's gone. And it wasn't even close. It was a very decisive rejection of his policies. And the guy who ran against him, this guy called Peter Magyar, he positioned himself as this sort of political outsider. The reality of the matter is that he was actually within Orban's party and then sort of broke off. So it's really interesting to see this. You had J.D. Vance coming and endorsing Orban very, very close to the election, and that actually seemed to have a negative effect on the results.
It is curious for all of those reasons and more, I guess. As you rightly say, this Peter Moja, who's taken over or will be taking over, he's...
Much better pronunciation.
Well, I don't know if I got that right either. No, I've been looking at it all morning. I always take a leap and go, maybe this one will do. But him, the new Prime Minister of Hungary, as he will be, is far more pro-EU, less pally with Putin. But as you rightly say, he was part of Orban's inner circle, and he's still a centre-right politician. He's not some socialist that's taken over. It's not that kind of change.
No, exactly. I mean, Hungary is quite a conservative country. That goes back to its deep roots in all that. And I think it's really interesting because Orban, he was really useful for Putin because Putin would use Orban in order to divide Europe and make sure that Europe was not united against Russia. And I think we're going to see a real change in that. I think Peter Magyar didn't have much to kind of pick apart as a political opponent. So what Orban did was use Zelensky as the big issue within this election, you know, saying that Zelensky was going to come to his house, Zelensky was corrupt, why are we giving so much money to Ukraine, as the big dividing factor. And what we're seeing is actually people rejecting that notion and siding with the EU, at least in Hungary, wanting to get closer to that bloc and wanting to say no to basically this populism that Orban ran on for so long.
It's interesting that the EU absolutely hated Viktor Orban. I think they've withheld money and all sorts of things. But most fascinating to me, Samara, on this is that Orban never advocated to leave the EU. He didn't take that extra step for some reason.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I don't think Hungary would ever want to leave the EU. I think it actually was one of those relationships where, unlike in Britain, the EU actually probably benefited a small nation like Hungary more than Hungary could take from it. Whereas with Britain, if you wanted to bring that into it, you know, it seemed like we were the ones funding the EU most of the time and holding it up and lifting it to its leverage. So I think Hungary always acknowledged that it needed that, but there was massive division. Now, let's see what this new prime minister can do and what he's capable of. He ran on anti-corruption, fixing public services, and being closer to the fight in Ukraine. So these are really simple policies that he was able to win on, which shows you potentially just how bad Orban's leadership was towards the end of his tenure. But I think the ripple effect will be serious. We can see how much Iran has then impacted Trump and then impacted all the politicians around Trump who endorsed him, and they're sort of light-footed about whether to go on his side, whether to not. I think it's going to be a really interesting effect from then on. Will we see this as the point that type of populism dies?
It was interesting that, as you rightly say, a couple of weeks back they sent J.D. Vance over there. I stand to be corrected on this. I can't really think of a time when a vice president has been flown across the world to another country to prop up an election campaign for an existing... I mean, leaders will always be naturally in synergy with parties of similar thinking. But to go as far as sending the second most powerful person in the world to Hungary to advocate and endorse a candidate... It rather shows you how important Trump associates his kind of politics with the world, and clearly trying to make sure there's still a foothold of at least some Trumpian-type policies in Europe. I can only assume that's the reasoning.
That's exactly what it is. And, you know, in J.D. Vance's speech, which I watched, he spoke about how Orban was really, really beneficial within their negotiations to Ukraine because he understands the Russian perspective. Now, I mean, when you talk about that, there are leaked things to say that Orban said, I'll be your little pet or your little duck, Putin, and it was quite a bit closer to Putin than, let's just say, J.D. Vance's quite light comments. But I think it was, from Trump's perspective, quite important to have someone like Orban in order to broker a deal between Ukraine and Russia. And he was quite pivotal in that. So you can kind of see from the US government's perspective why it might have been more beneficial to have Orban in. But you're right. I mean, we talk about J.D. Vance. He flew in there literally in between brokering a peace deal or trying to broker a peace deal for Iran, flying into such an insignificant and small country. By the way, I mean, Hungarians, I support you and all that, but it's not exactly on the top of the list when you've got World War III on the precipice. It shows you just how pivotal this election was and just how damning this loss really is.
Indeed. Samara, thank you. We'll see what the ramifications are. Samara Gill, Talk Breakfast reporter with us on that one. It's going to be interesting how this one pans out in terms of knock-on effect. Does it have any knock-on effect for us? Will it have any knock-on effect? I guess the only argument around that is what it says about more right-wing parties as distinct from even centre-right parties. So this new Peter Magyar, who will become the new Prime Minister of Hungary, he's 20 years younger, thereabouts, of Viktor Orban, his predecessor. He still represents a centre-right party. He's not going to have that relationship with Putin that Orban had, which many, even some of his own supporters, thought was a little bit iffy. Was Trump's only intervention in terms of sending J.D. Vance there due to solely keeping a more right-wing flavour of politics alive in the EU? Because you couldn't find it really in any other country. I mean, if you look around the EU, it is a state, as it were. It's an amalgamation of... I know Spain or Portugal will go, oh, no, we're not part of a state. Yeah, you are. The EU is a state. I mean, you can't... It's got an anthem. It's got a currency, it's got a flag, it's got a parliament, it's got a president. It's a state, right? And you are part of it or you're not part of it. And within that state, there was little old Hungary who was singing from a different hymn sheet. Was that the reason Trump sent him there? Does it make any difference? Would Nigel Farage suffer any consequences, for example, as a result of this? I don't think so, but that's in the absence of any other logic, that's the only argument I can imagine would be live in this right now in terms of our perspective. Just briefly on woodwork, metalwork and all the rest of it. Angela says all students took woodwork, metalwork, needlework and cooking in 1979 before choosing specific options. Did they? I'm sure it was divided between male and female. I don't think. I mean, I was slightly after that era, but certainly boys didn't do cookery and needlework. And so therefore you didn't get it as an option. Because if you did, you wouldn't have ever done the lesson before. 0344 499 1000. Some great calls and comments on that. We'll go to more of those in a few moments' time. We're talking about Trump, we're talking about Iran, we're talking about the special relationship. On that point, here's a voice note. Morning, James.
Good morning, Ian. All Starmer had to do was let Trump use the bases. Didn't have to get involved. But what annoys me about this man, he said he was not involved, but as soon as he gets his chance to go for a photo opportunity, he's off like a rabbit. God, this man, he makes my blood boil, Ian. Sooner this man is out of office, the better. What scares me, though, who's coming for his job. Thank you very much, Ian. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. It is Talk Breakfast. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for the next couple of weeks here at the home of common sense. So much going on. This comes from Testament on X, who says, I'm interested in the 1.6 million figure you keep mentioning in relation to Johnson & Co., known as the Boris wave. We had 900,000 in 1 year alone, 600,000 in others. The true number is 2.5 million plus, perhaps higher, 3.5 million. They're the numbers from Reform. So that's Nigel Farage's estimate that the 1.6 million people who moved to the UK under Boris Johnson and his successors. I guess it depends on which numbers you... That's the only answer I can think, because the Boris wave, of course, was not channel migration, but legitimate migration. So people who were literally invited in. On what is going on in schools, I love this. Steve says, my dad was born in 1937. When at school, he made a hammered brass fruit bowl with a copper-ringed base soldered to the bowl. It's still in use today. It works. So that is just shy of, it's like 90 years ago that was made, and it's still in use today. But it did fling back a memory of what we did in metal. Well, we made a small version, which was probably the ashtray. You had to make a ring, you had to seal the ring, weld the ring together, then weld it onto the base. But the base was hammered out with little dots. I can't remember the name of that process. Now I'm starting to remember metalwork rather favourably, because that was a nice little skill. You were doing something that quite literally cavemen had done, and you were employing the same technology to make a quality product. And Steve's message there is testament to its quality, that almost a century later, it still works. Love it. Steve, thank you for that. 0344 499 1000. Let's move to this story. This is the Southport inquiry, a report into the killing of 3 little girls expected to be highly critical of public services that ignored the threat posed by the murderer. At least 6 public bodies are expected to be heavily criticised in today's report, including 2 police forces, 2 NHS mental health services, and the local council's family and social services. We know, of course, what happened. Axel Rudabakana, shortly before midday, 29th of July 2024, launched this indiscriminate knife attack at this Taylor Swift-themed dance workshop. It was horrific. Nothing more needs to be said beyond that, but it was horrific for a number of reasons. The death of those little girls, the massive injuries to those around, and the ongoing and, if you like, lifetime trauma of those that witnessed it. But of course, like so many events in our country, when we read these stories, the horror is compounded by the thought that perhaps it didn't have to have happened if every industry, every element, every part of the establishment had played its part correctly. Let's speak with Peter Blexley, former Met police detective. Morning to you, Peter. We can go over forever the horror of this. It's choking to even revisit the story for so many obvious reasons. But as I just mentioned, it makes it so much worse when you start to delve into how this could have been prevented. Morning, Peter.
Yes, and the way you use the word compounded, I think, is so apposite. But please, just allow me briefly to remember Elsie, Alice and Bibi, rest their tiny souls. Of course, we will hear tales of lamentable, unexcusable times when this could and should have been prevented. Axel Rudabakana took a knife into school on 10 separate occasions, and yet police, the PREVENT programme, there were 3 referrals to the PREVENT programme, mental health services, the parents, let's not forget the parents and their culpability, all of the aforementioned failed to stop him going out and butchering beautiful young children and injuring many more, including adults. It is absolutely appalling. And may I just highlight what really it's a failure to grip things that absolutely pollutes public services these days. So much of public service work is about ticking a box. so an employee can say, well, I've done what I needed to do, I've ticked that box, rather than grip the situation, highlight the situation, be persistent, don't take no for an answer, and ensure that something gets done. Because in public service, so often, if you raise a problem, you are the problem. Whereas really, people that do take a grip on situations need to be treasured, appreciated, and very much listened to.
I would assume, and we will wait and see when this is phase one of this inquiry, when this report is published at midday. But I would imagine we are going to hear that there were enough red flags for authorities, social services, mental health, whoever, the police, to have suggested that this person, Rudy Cabana, was of such concern that he should have been either sectioned or arrested or kept away from the general public. That's usually what we hear. In defence, those institutions will say, well, if we thought that, we would have done it. We come across lots of people who are terrorised with mental health issues that don't ever do anything like this. We can't just lock people up because they look a bit iffy. I would imagine that's going to be the kind of response.
Well, it probably will. And I've no doubt we will hear that dreadful, awful, hollow phrase that we hear far too often these days: lessons have been learned.
Yeah.
Well, it's way too late for that. But just to reiterate, if I may, after Rudy Cabana had been arrested and he was being assessed, this gives you an idea of how much liberal, woke fluffiness goes on amongst some of these services. Somebody who assessed Rudy Cabana called him Axel is a boy with needs. Well, many people would say he needs a length of rope round his neck. But this is the kind of language that fails to grip situations. People should say this is a danger. The points I highlighted: 3 referrals to the Prevent programme, stops with a knife on 10 occasions going into school. Anybody with a modicum of common sense and an ounce of experience would say, hang on, stop everybody here. We have got a major problem.
We've seen it with so many. I'm thinking of Baby P and stories such as that. Whilst it's a different story, the catastrophe is frighteningly similar in that the life of a little innocent young boy was snuffed out because of those that were charged with looking after him. And again, countless referrals to social services, all manner of issues around the neighbours worried and disturbed by the people that were looking after Baby P. And as you say, the same line came up. Lessons have been learned. I just don't think lessons are ever really learned. And I guess if you had to be slightly generous, and I don't like to be in cases such as this, but is it ever possible to learn a lesson? Because a mad person with bad intent will always walk among us.
I come straight back to what I said at the top of this piece about grip. There is a lack in our public services of gripping a situation. And I witnessed it firsthand only last year when I went patrolling with the police in Bedfordshire, and they would go to a call, go to an incident, and basically they just put a sticking plaster over it. That sticking plaster ticks a box, and then because they're so busy, they move on to the next call, and so it goes on, and so it goes on. But all that happened was 2 days later, we got called back to the same premises for a very similar incident, because public services are not taking the time to grip a situation and see it through to the nth degree. There's too much box ticking, there's too much backside covering, and there's a chronic lack of grip.
And there is another worrying component to this, of course, because if you look at the Valdo Calocane case in Nottingham, where we only in the last couple of weeks got this horrifying information that authorities were too scared to act with this man that went on to kill 3 people because they might be accused of being racist. So they didn't want to tackle a dangerous criminal because they thought there's too many people who are not white already here. One more. Many we're playing. We're in even deeper disturbing territory, Peter Bleksley, than I thought.
You raise a brilliant point, which is absolutely sickening. Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates should all be alive today, but they weren't because of the cowardice of people in public services. And I use that word again, grip. They didn't grip the situation because, as you brilliantly highlight, they were scared of being called racist. They've got blood on their hands, those people who failed to take control, to grip these situations. We need public services to be courageous, to do the right thing, to lock up dangerous people. Do not allow them to mingle amongst us because, quite frankly, Axel Rudabakana and Valdo Calacane are monsters. That's a fact. And they're both black. That's a fact. Do not let it cloud or interfere what needs to be done in future. Lock monsters like those up.
The idea that we legislate, it's especially in areas such as this, because of the colour of somebody's skin, is, I mean, it's beyond backwards thinking. It's horrifying. It's lethal, as we know, demonstrably lethal. Listen, Peter, thank you. Very passionate stuff from Peter Bleksley, former Met Police detective, with us on the programme. Back to you, 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts and comments on a whole range of issues here. We've got the light-hearted stuff in our school days, woodwork, metalwork, needlework and cooking, versus the issue of fish and chips and sausage rolls being removed from school menus. We're having some fun with that. We've got the serious stuff, of course, with Iran and what is happening with the inquiry we just talked about with Peter Bleksley. More comment on that as well. And Keir Starmer, yet again, nipping us, not so much dipping our toes into the EU waters, but our entire foot. Don't worry, it'll be a leg by the end of the year. Let's get a word on the EU with Daniel. Morning, Dan.
Good morning, Ian. It's Daniel from Epsom here. Aren't the left, and isn't Keir Starmer very clandestine and underhanded? They can't accept a democratic decision by the British people to Brexit. So he's going to do, he didn't have it in his manifesto that he actually said that we wouldn't rejoin the EU, but in a very underhanded way, he's going to join all of these institutions against our wishes in a very sort of clandestine and sort of devious way. That tells you a lot about Keir Starmer. What an awful man.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Lots to get through here. Just gone 10 to 9. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for the next couple of weeks. Reg says, oh my goodness, if I even carried a penknife to school when I was a kid, my dad would have thrashed me to within an inch of my life and then taken me to the police station and asked them to put me away. Yeah, time standards have changed. On a lighter note, Gary says, back in the 70s, I made the same ashtray that you made. The process of making a little dots was called planishing. That's it, done with planishing hammer. There was a special hammer for it, and the ring wasn't welded to the bottom. It was brazed. Oh, there you go. There's the correct terminology. Gary, thank you very much indeed for that. And this one from Brian, he says, at woodwork class, I made a book rack. The main purpose was to learn how to make a dovetail joint. I also remember making a thing to wave around at sports to encourage whoever I was supporting. It made a clacking noise that was immediately banned at home. What was that called, a clacker? Am I just making that up? I don't know. Back in my day, girls did domestic science, which was actually not a bad thing because it taught them domestic hygiene and budgeting, as well as basic cooking skills. Yes, more of that. I think that's the point that Brian is making. I have to say, the takeaway stuff from woodwork does stay with me now. If I saw a bit of wood, I might be doing some this afternoon at home, bit of DIY. Quite genuinely, stuff I learned, very basic stuff at woodwork at school, just how to use a saw apart from anything else, like using the entirety of the saw, not just the bit in the middle when you're sawing a bit of wood. You take the point. Thank you for that, Brian. 0344 499 1000. Coming up on 5 minutes to 9, let's get some sport.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Dan King is with us, Chelsea correspondent at The Sun. Dan, morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
All right, just before we get underway with things, I mean, as a Chelsea fan myself, firstly, you know what the weekend panned out like. Firstly, I've never wanted Fulham to win a football match so much in my entire life as I did on Saturday. And then, of course, that was only predicated on Chelsea winning one the following day. It would have swapped our positions in the table. Neither of those things happened, sadly.
No, and I think if you watch the first half of Chelsea's game against Man City...
It was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were. I think Chelsea were the better team. I think they were all set up. But again, as Rossini reflected afterwards, it's just odd moments and mistakes. And then Santos loses O'Reilly for the first goal. 6 minutes later, they concede a second, and it's basically game over. And that's been the story of their season. Yeah,
it was. And they ramped it up. So I was talking to Andy Townsend, interestingly, this morning as I came into work, and he was there for the match, and we were talking about how City managed to ramp it up. I mean, it looked like you were watching Colchester versus Barcelona in that second half. I mean, what is it that Pep can do that other managers seem to fail at?
Well, City did start the second half a lot better. I mean, I think there's quite a simple thing. You don't need to be much of a tactician. I think at half time you just give them a good rollicking and a kick up the backside and say that was not good enough, and it wasn't. When it wasn't good enough, and even before the goal, they had there was a decent block by Hato on Haaland. There was another blocked shot as well, and so it was clear that they'd come out with a lot greater intent. But again, it is the mistake that lets them score the first goal, or a failure to mark O'Reilly, and then they build from there and they gain confidence. And all teams thrive on confidence. We can see the reverse happening with Arsenal, where they're getting more and more and more nervous, and of course. I mean, I know as a Chelsea fan, you're upset with the result yesterday, but I think for neutrals, the way it's set up next Sunday's clash between Manchester City and Arsenal will be very welcome, because it feels like a title decider already.
It really does, doesn't it? And I think I'm right in saying City have a game in hand as well, don't they? So
that's right. Yes, I mean, yeah, effectively, Bournemouth beating Arsenal put the title basically back in City's hands, because they've got to play Arsenal. Now, if Arsenal get a draw, they keep the title in their hands, but it's suddenly concertinaed.
Indeed, concertinaed being the right word. Let's move to happier news. Pubs to get a 2 a.m. extension for last orders during the World Cup on nights, certain nights under government licensing boost. I mean, this is great for football fans. Who doesn't want to sit in a pub having a drink and watching some international games at this level? Maybe not so good for the people that employ you the next morning.
No, certainly drowning sorrows, and it's just a bit of an extension, which means for the knockout games, even if they kick off relatively early, pubs will still be able to stay open till 1 o'clock. The group stage games are already you're going to get late licenses 1 and 2. But it's a bit of a flip side. I can remember in 2002 being at the pub with my dad, to watch England Brazil, and then having a few Guinnesses with a full cooked breakfast, and then having to go into work afterwards. So this is a better way round for sure.
Fantastic. And let's move to this one again. It's Chelsea connected story. One of the greatest workhorses in Chelsea history, John Terry, is going all Ryan Reynolds on us over there at Colchester. What's happening?
Well, that's again. My dad's a Colchester boy. He grew up watching them at Layer Road, the old stadium. So it looks like poised to announce that JT will be part of a broader consortium that's going to buy the League Two club. I mean, earlier in this year he was expressing a bit of disappointment that he wasn't used during the kind of interregnum between Maresca leaving and Rossignol, but and he hasn't, apart from being assistant boss at Aston Villa, hasn't put his pro license to a lot of use. But I guess if you become a co-owner of a club, you can start making sure your influence is heard. So maybe that's his thinking.
It's good to see our old boys doing well. You got Frank Lampard, carving out an incredible managerial career. John Terry going to become an owner. All good work. Yeah, indeed. What's Dennis Wise going to do next? That's my question.
Start another fight in an empty room, I guess.
Great answer. Good to have you on, Dan. Thank you very much indeed. What a speedy answer that was as well. Dan King, Chelsea correspondent over there at The Sun. Lots to get through in the next section. Stand by. Our lines are open. 0344 499 1000. It's Talk Breakfast with Ian Collins in for Jezza. Let's get the news at 9.
Of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning all around the clock to late at night, to the point where on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk morning. It's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle. Welcome to breakfast. So much to get through. Great calls, great comments on the way. We've got the slightly lighter stuff, and rightly so, and the heavier stories out there as well, and indeed some disturbing ones as well, particularly when it comes to Starmer and the EU. Let's get a voice note on exactly that. This comes from Matt.
Morning, Ian. So you're on the early shift. Let's see if you're so chirpy in a week's time. Matt in Warrington loading the van. It's Keir Starmer. He's solving the big Iranian problem. Nope. He's going to get us back into Europe stealthily, because he's a snidey little sneak. He's taxing businesses now, family businesses that are handing over to each other 20% tax. So it's the farmers, it's the pensioners, it's the family-run businesses. There's nothing sacred in this country anymore. There's nothing that they can't tax you on. It's tax, 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 take, and give to the people who don't give anything back. It's just getting ridiculous. Every week there's something else. Anyway, great show.
Matt, thank you, mate, for that. You might be right. Will I be as sprightly in a fortnight's time? Probably crawling into work at 5 a.m. Great point, though. There is, we are living in a sense, because there is a contract, isn't there? There's a contract, I think, that taxpayers have with the government, because nobody that I know, I mean, wouldn't it be great to live in a utopian world where nobody had to pay any tax? But we understand, you want the roads fixed and the healthcare and education. Yeah, we get it, okay? But it's a trade-off. We pay in and we get something back, and you have a tangible sense that what you're getting back is worth the money that you put in. And if we're not seeing that, and man, we haven't seen this for a long, long time, if we're not seeing that, then I think we have the proverbial Houston problem, right? Clearly. 0344 499 1000. Let's speak with Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Head of Comms for Popular Conservatism. Annunziata, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you. You're in a different setting this morning as well.
It is still the school holidays for my children, and we popped to London to visit Uncle Jacob.
How is Uncle Jacob, by the way? Has he got taller? What's going on?
He's very well and still making my children laugh.
That's good. Yes, he's very good at doing that. I know that from first-hand experience. Listen, lots to talk about here this morning. Just a point on our last message we had there about tax. We are living in the sort of government take but doesn't give back feel. There is a vibe about that, and it's accelerated, curiously, since July 2024. I'm trying to think what happened then.
Who'd have thought it? Our taxes have carried on going up, both stealth taxes and very obvious ones like employers' national insurance, which is affecting how high our unemployment is. And yet, all our public services feel like they're falling to pieces. That the waiting lists haven't come down. The potholes are beyond belief. We have absolutely no military to speak of at all. We don't feel we're getting the value that we expect from government. I mean, I'm afraid this happens every time government gets too big, that it spends money on things that it sees as pet projects, but that don't actually benefit the British people. And that's not why we hand over our hard-earned money.
Yeah. And it's hard-earned money that is being taxed in so many different directions, of course, you know, because stealth tax is the government's sneaky weapon in so many areas of life.
If you look at petrol, to drive down to London, I had to fill up my tank, and 55% of that goes in tax. But part of that is VAT on fuel duty, tax on tax.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable as it is. We can't afford it. We can't afford this government.
As you rightly say, over 50%, I keep making this point as well, over 50% of that litre equation goes to the government. But it's even worse than that, of course, because the government are then taxing the companies that are making money on their sales for it. So it probably gets up to over 60% when you crunch the numbers.
Yeah, it absolutely would do.
In terms of what's happening with our country, of course, we might not have to worry about any of this soon, Annunziata, because we're going back into the EU. Did you not read this? Do you not get the memo on this? Keir Starmer has decided that this new set of regulations that he's trying to put together for trade with the EU will mean that any future rule changes won't need a vote in Parliament. Just a bit of a rubber stamp over there at Downing Street. Job done, away we go. We are rejoining by instalments, I'm sure we are.
Absolutely. It will be done under something called secondary legislation, whereby Parliament doesn't get a vote. To rejoin the EU in this way, in fact, the British people should have a vote. But to not even give their representatives in Parliament one is a further betrayal. This is absolutely disgusting of Keir Starmer. I think it's always been his plan. He was leading the campaign for us to not leave after the referendum, to deny the British people democracy. And now he's trying to take us back in by the back door. This is all smoke and mirrors, using powers that are not meant for this purpose to ensure that we have to just follow any rules the EU puts in place. We've got trade deals with countries across the world. And in fact, those are all benefiting our trade and growing at a faster pace than anything with the EU, which is itself shrinking. It's gone from a quarter of world trade to less than a fifth. And it's continuing to get smaller and less relevant to the world economy. And yet we will be tying ourselves into their rules, whatever they make them, with no say by Parliament, no say by the British people, and putting at risk all the trade deals we've made with other growing economies, such as the US, such as India, such as the Pacific countries. This is an absolutely terrible deal, wherein the EU gets what it wants because its economies are struggling and it needs the input from Britain, and we lose out.
It sort of fires into another issue which might explain, you know, Keir Starmer's curious position on these things. I've long pondered, you know, what are the main differences between being left-wing and right-wing? Well, I think that right-wing thinking in its conventional form is merely instinctive. It's kind of human nature. It just sort of happens. It's a bit like telling a kid to run a race and asking them to try and lose. It doesn't, you know, your instinct is to try and do better. Your instinct is to try and win something. Your instinct is to do well. Whereas left-wing thinking is something you sort of subscribe to as a bit of a kind of bullet point list, isn't it? You go, right, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, I'm going to think like this, and I'm going to join that. And I see this with Starmer, with the EU. It's kind of, it's in his DNA, isn't it, to be part of a big fluffy club, as he sees it, that there is, I don't know whether it's safety in numbers. Does it speak volumes about a leader's weaknesses, that they feel happier in big company where the collective make a decision rather than the individual? Is it that? I'm not quite sure which one of those things. Maybe it's a bit of all of it, but this is certainly in Starmer's DNA to be Mr. EU, Mr. Globalist. It's just how he likes it.
Completely agree. And he is Mr. Globalist. And globalism is a socialist project whereby there aren't nation states. There isn't the individual. It is all about the togetherness. And we see this with him when it comes to international law, that the Chagos deal that he's having to backtrack on and hopefully will permanently now backtrack on, is an example of him thinking that the international law is more important than the national law or the national interest. And the EU is same as part of the same pattern of behaviour. But the EU also gives our prime ministers, and it's one of the reasons I was so keen that we left the EU, it gives our prime ministers and our governments absolute cover to be useless, because they can always say, that's not our fault, we didn't do that, the EU made us do it.
Yeah.
And as long as they can hide behind that, and I think at the moment in particular, Keir Starmer is desperate for something to hide behind because of his own failings, his Chancellor's failings, every single department's failings. He wants to be able to hide behind the EU's institutions and say, it wasn't me, Gov, they made us do it. That's a betrayal of democracy.
And he seems to be ramping this up, doesn't he, now that this relationship with the United States has kind of gone full pear-shaped. It seems irredeemable at this stage. So this is his natural... he's gravitating to his natural home, I suppose.
I mean, I think what Donald Trump has said is interesting. Whilst he has absolutely laid into the uselessness of the British response, every time he's rude about Keir Starmer, whether he calls him Neville Chamberlain or anything else, he does say, but I very much like him. And I think that is a glimmer of hope that America doesn't hate the British.
Yeah.
It has a real problem with the policies of this government. And that's yet another reason we've got to get rid of this government, because we need strong allies who fundamentally have the same interests as us. And Keir Starmer seems to be doing his best to make sure that we don't. And yet he's cozying up to China, who has no interests in common with us at all.
None whatsoever, other than to completely dominate and even obliterate what business we do have left, of course. And I don't think they'd even shy away from that definition. Just in terms of Trump, the Strait of Hormuz is now closed. The Americans have closed it. We can argue forever what the specific logistical thinking is behind that. But Keir Starmer, again, will not be part of it. Is this a wise move by Mr. Starmer? He's saying, well, we'll send in some minesweepers afterwards. I think Mr. Trump wanted some help now.
He did, and this is just so typical of Keir Starmer's approach to this entire conflict, that he's been not in, he's been winning the peace, he's been not in, he's been sorting it all out. He's an absolute fantasist. He's trying to have his cake and eat it. And so we're doing the hokey-cokey of we're in, we're out, we're involved, we're not involved, whilst just alienating all our friends and allies. And more than that, the British people need a solution to this. We need to be able to afford our petrol at the pumps. We need to be able to heat our houses and run our lights. And our businesses need to be able to afford to produce the goods we buy. And at the moment, it is all heading very much in the the wrong direction, where we will, in fact, just be bankrupt because of energy costs. It is the underpinning of our economy. And so I think Keir Starmer has a moral obligation to do absolutely everything he can to get the oil flowing again.
On that point, Annunziata, thank you. Have a lovely day with the kids. Great to speak with you again. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Head of Comms at Popular Conservatism. Thank you to her. Over to you on all of these stories. And, of course, lots coming in already from you. We have Ben Habib with us in the last hour. Simon says, I hear this quite a lot, Ben Habib needs to put his big boy pants on and join up with Nigel Farage and reform for the good of our country, which is desperate for men and women of heart to put their differences aside and work together to save our country. If he can't do that, then he isn't a patriot and therefore irrelevant. Although, is the onus on Ben or on Nigel? Because this suggestion keeps coming up. Who's got to buckle first? I'm not sure whether Reform are looking for the help of Ben or Rupert, as we see it so far. But many people on the right of politics, not unreasonably saying, well, the only thing you're going to get this thing running is to put all three together. Then you've got a dynamic coalition of the willing. Daryl says, morning Ian, in school woodwork, I made a wooden toy of a small boy called Herbert. He later grew up to be Keir Starmer. That was very prophetic. I didn't realise I made a wooden Starmer, and he stayed wooden to this day. Jenny says, this awful Prime Minister will go, but Labour will still be in power. However, the British public will say to any new leader, we see you. Yeah, that's true. If after the May elections he has an absolute nightmare, and certainly all the polls suggest that would be the case. It's not just the council seats throughout the country, but the entirety of Scotland and Wales is up for grabs. And that will be game-changing. It'll be earthquake territory for Keir Starmer if he doesn't come out with a semblance of what he could call tacit success, at the very least. So if he goes, if he says, right, OK, it hasn't worked, I've been here just over 2 years, I think he's just crossed the... How long was Chamberlain in power for? Has Keir Starmer just gone over the Chamberlain time? Certainly one of the leaders. I'm sure I saw this at the weekend. Anyway, he could say, I've done 2 years. It wasn't the greatest innings, but I did nearly 2 years. But now time for somebody else to take their place. Who is that person? Who is that person? And what does it do if Angela Rayner, so you've got Rayner, and who's very popular with the party, Ed Miliband, who is very popular with the party. I know it's very bizarre, all of this, isn't it? When you read this out loud, you think, do any of these people... But it happens in all parties. They have internally their ideal candidate, but it's never reflected by the greater kind of appetite or instinct of the rest of the country. It wasn't Chamberlain, because Chamberlain served for just under 3 years, from May 1937 to May 1940. And Starmer's been there less than 2 so far. He's certainly done longer than Liz Truss. We know that much. We spoke about the Southport inquiry a little earlier. May in Yorkshire says, I'm a mental health community nurse. All our trusts are interested in is box ticking and gathering statistics. Every week we are pulled up on not recording a patient's race, religion or gender. Our teams has outcomes published monthly, and we have to meet the targets, otherwise managers are on our backs. This takes away from patient care as we're too busy with paperwork. Good Lord. May, thank you for that. Firstly, good work on the good work you're trying to do. I get that. But this is just constant, isn't it? We hear it in the police. We're doing paper. We've got to tick these boxes. We've got to make sure we've, addressed some kind of equilibrium. I mean, who is seriously looking for racial balance on mental health outcomes? Surely you're looking for... I mean, it might be interesting as another note to look at some point. I get that. But not to aspire to it. Let's look for... We need equality, so don't tick that. Oh, yeah, we've got too many of that group, so don't tick that box. That's fine. We want to make sure that when we put the stats out... governments, not just this one, particularly this one, but not just this one, are absolutely obsessed with flipping databases. They love a graph. They love a flip chart. They love a pie chart. They like to, break it up, go, this percentage of this and this percent. I don't know what that is. Where does that come from? Where does that innate desire? You don't run your life like that. Nobody goes to work every day saying, I wonder what my pie chart will look like by 6 o'clock. No one ever did that. But governments have an obsession with this stuff. And then they dine out on the stats and go, look what we produced. Oh, and you'll notice that everything is nice and equal. So we haven't, in any way looked at one group and said that group is better at this or that group is worse at that, because our pie chart tells us so. And we've got an abacus as well, but don't get me started on that. 0344 499 1000. Thoughts on all of this? Lines are open, 9:20. This is Talk. Let's get a voice note on the EU. It comes from Kelvin. Morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Ian. On Starmer, he deliberately destroyed the relationship with the US because he wants to get closer to the EU and get us back in. We had a democratic vote. We voted for out. That was the vote of the people, and we should stay out of it. The king should wake up, grow a set of balls, and bloody call him back to the palace and dissolve his parliament and get rid of him and call a general election. But he won't. He's too woke. It's his country that's going down the pan and he can't see it. That's the king for you, sitting on his throne and doing absolutely nothing about it. Bye.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Yes, good morning. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for the next couple of weeks. He's back after that. Loads from you coming in too. We're going to talk the royals as well. More on Starmer, more on Iran, more on Trump, Hungary, immigration, reform. Goodness me. The list goes. Oh, and fish and chips as well. Fish and chips being removed from schools. This is a crime scene, frankly. Fish and chips, apparently, kids don't want that muck anymore. Well, they do, but our political masters don't want kids to have that stuff anymore, so they're getting it off the menu along with things like sausage rolls. What is going on in the school canteen? Starmer in the EU is a very big focus this morning as well. Let's get a voice note on exactly that. Morning, Sarah.
Morning, Ian. Great show. Lovely to hear you in the morning. Just listening to your conversation with Ben Habib, and whom I really, really like. And I just really, really wish that he and Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe would just put their differences behind them for the good of the country. However, I totally and absolutely agree with Ben that Keir Starmer hates Britain. And I think he knows his days are numbered, and he's using his somewhat short time left to do as much damage and reversal of what people have voted for as he possibly can before he's gone. And but this man, who, yeah, it's a strong word, but I can honestly say I hate him and what he's doing to this country. Anyway, like I said, great show. Thanks. Bye.
Sarah, thank you. I've never known a prime minister that commands such negative views, where it kind of, it's not just I didn't vote for him, but, I kind of respect it. It's not that. There's none of that with Keir Starmer. And when you've got Labour voters wanting him gone as well, I think overarchingly, Keir Starmer is just not very good at being a prime minister. Even Boris Johnson, I never thought Boris was the real deal. And I know many of you, there was a sort of bit of a Trump moment, wasn't there? That if you attacked Boris Johnson, you might as well have attacked someone's dad. People got very protective over Boris. It's weirder when it's Trump because, he's not even our leader. But nonetheless, a lot of people sort of own Trump as their own. And Boris had that for a bit after the whole Red Wall thing. Boris was your man. And I just looked at that EU deal that he carved out and I thought, that's kind of Theresa May's deal, a little bit. But what Boris was very good at, he was very good at serving up bucket loads of spoonfuls, as he would have said, of optimism. He was good at playing that card. And when Boris Johnson was on fire, there were some incredible moments from him. He was also immensely likeable. For anybody who ever met Boris Johnson, as I did a number of times, he was a good guy to get on with. He was supremely polite. You could have a pint with Boris Johnson. Starmer doesn't have any of that stuff, which is, a slight remiss problem when you're the Prime Minister. You've got to have some of it. You can't have all of it, maybe. Trevor Gaviner, former political editor over there at The Sun, is with us. Trevor, morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
I think you would echo that. You've known Boris for many years as well. Likeable chap. You could have a drink with him, and he was good at telling you that life is going to be fantastic.
Yes, Boris was one of those remarkable people, politicians particularly, who could actually make you smile before he said a word.
Yes.
He could walk into a crowded room and everyone had a beam on their face. Everyone, whether they were supporters or even critics, would rush to shake his hand. Yeah. That is a total opposite of Keir Starmer. I think that some of your callers this morning have summed him up as wooden and just a puppet. And that's all he is. I think that he is unique in the annals of British politics in being unpopular and useless. I mean, that's the problem. Politically, he is incompetent. He doesn't know how to do the job of being a politician, let alone as the leader of the country. And I think people have really gone against him big time. On May the 7th, I think we're going to see a spectacular thumbs down for Keir Starmer personally.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm always intrigued when Boris Johnson was Mayor of London. You may remember that when he used to go over to America, as mayors do on these kind of trips, there was always a battle from the late shows to get him on as a guest because he was such good material. Whenever he pitched up with David Letterman or whoever it happened to be, you don't really get that with many politicians. Politicians aren't usually on those kind of programmes, but Boris had all of that, as you rightly say. Keir Starmer is bereft of quite literally all of those things, and what we see now with Mr. Starmer, Trevor, is this continual incursion into EU territory. He's never, he was the man that opposed it, agitated against it, tried to get votes to stop it, etc. He was front and centre for Labour in all of that. He spent a long time denying it, and now I think that denial has gone, the veil has been removed, and Keir Starmer is, at least by instalments, trying to take us back into the EU, Trevor Kavanagh.
Yes, and I think that this is one of the key indicators of what is the hallmark of the Starmer leadership. It is deceit. I think this is not just an undemocratic move, which flies in the face of that referendum, which was a voice of democracy in action. It is sly, it's devious, and it's actually cowardly. He is not prepared to risk a vote in Parliament. He's not prepared to go to the country in a second referendum. He is sliding this in through Parliament in a way that it cannot be contested. And the only way that you can make any changes to it is if you can vote down a government which has a huge majority.
It's interesting that he's kind of now, I mentioned the mask slipping, he now seems to be almost bragging about this. He's not in denial anymore. The relationship with America has gone down the pan. This is safe territory for Keir Starmer. He feels comfortable in this particular skin. He loves the idea of the EU. The whole global leader thing feeds into everything he feels he performs better doing. It's no longer a guilty pleasure. This could well become, come 2029, an election policy to take this country back into Europe.
Yes, if he gets that far. I think Sarah, your caller a few moments ago, summed this up, I thought, very acutely, in that Keir Starmer knows he's finished. He knows Labour will not win a second term, and he's determined to do as much as he possibly can to assert what you might call his agenda, if it deserves such an elevated term, which is the destruction of everything that we hold dear in this country. And that includes our freedom and sovereignty as an independent nation state, as an ally of Europe, but not under its rule and under its thumb. But I think that that is what he will do. Whether he has the ability or the strength to actually suggest that this should be a policy for the next general election, I think that would be a huge risk. And also, I think we're going to see in the red wall seats in the looming local elections just how much anger there is still amongst voters in those areas about the betrayal of Brexit as we voted for it.
How damaging is this relationship with America, which, you know, he kind of gave it a go, Starmer, didn't he? There was a time, fairly early doors, when he seemed to be constantly on the phone to Donald Trump. Of course, there was his visit, Starmer's visit over there, the Oval Office, the invite from the King, and then, of course, the Trump visit. It all looked like Starmer was trying to do this kind of Blair Clinton / Blair Bush thing, and ideally in an ideal dream world, and he can only dream a Thatcher Reagan thing. He was giving it a go, and then of course lots of things started to go wrong, and you know, we now know where we are. Is that now irreversible? Is that the damage done? Is that Starmer saying, look, I dallied a little bit with doing that, but it's not going to work. It never will work under Donald Trump, so I'm going back to where I'm comfortable, not that fussed about the relationship with the United States. Do you think he's that far gone?
Well, I don't think he was ever there. I think that when you were talking about Tony Blair and his relationship with America and George Bush and the American political elite on both sides of the house in America, I think that that was sincere. There was a total lack of sincerity when it came to Keir Starmer and his relationship with Donald Trump, who I think from the very outset, the very moment that Donald Trump emerged on the political landscape, I think that Keir Starmer recoiled in loathing for him. I think the only reason that there was any relationship, even though it's now extinct, between the two of them is because Trump allowed it, because he's pro-British, or was until Starmer came along and made it clear that he was not an ally at all. So I don't think there was ever anything in the way of sincerity here. And I think that this is the true Keir Starmer emerging as someone who really hates the Americans, not the Americans as such, but the idea of America as the leader of the Western world. So that is, I think, beginning to show, and I think he's beginning to revel in it.
I think you're right. Trevor, great to see you again. Thank you for coming on. Trevor Kavanagh, he is, of course, journalist, former political editor at The Sun. Thank you to him. Over to you on all of that. 0344 499 1000. This one in from Jenny, who says, this awful PM will go, but Labour will still be in power. I think I might have just read that. However, we'll still see the public will say to any new leader, we see you. Yeah, happy to read that again. Janice in Staffordshire, who was the numpty that decided to close the majority of mental institutions because they felt that all these places need to be out in, all these people need to be out in the community? Bring back the men in the green van, says Janice. Yeah, I mean, things do change, I get that, but not to the degree where we look at someone and say, well, they're probably a killer. They have the propensity to kill. They have very violent and ideas about things. Their general demeanour is incredibly volatile and confrontational. You wouldn't want to be in a room with them on your own, but they're okay to be out in the community. I mean, that's sort of where we're at. We've seen it with Nottingham. We've got the Southport inquiry, phase 1 of the Southport inquiry, coming out at midday today. And there is every possibility we will see something kind of resembling what I've just been talking about. Let's get a voice note. And by the way, we're going to talk about the Queen in a second. There's a new book out called Queen Elizabeth II, In Private, in Public. Robert Hardman, one of the most respected royal biographers and journalists on planet Earth, is going to be with us to tell us more in a couple of moments' time. Let's go back to a lighter note when it comes to things we've talked about this morning, stuff we used to do at school. This is not the general retro kind of, do you remember Spangles? This is reference a very serious story about fish and chips being removed from the agenda, but it somehow got extended to metalwork, woodwork, needlework and cookery. Let's get a voice note on this from Dave. Morning, Dave.
Morning, Ian. Great show as always. I did needlework, music, cooking, woodwork, metalwork. Yeah, it wasn't split then, but I actually do think it was a great idea because I learned to cook. I could sew a button on. We missed those things. And your previous caller about school dinners, that's why when we look back at our generation now, and I'm 61, where we grew up on school dinners being healthy options such as meat, potatoes and veg. Simple, solid food that gave us the right foundation. None of this burgers and chicken nuggets and stuff. Foundation food.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, yes, good morning. 20 minutes to 10 o'clock. We've got a lot to get through in this section. Robert Hardman is with us, the royal author. Robert, good morning to you.
Morning, Ian.
Nice to see you. Are you a royal author, a royal biographer, a royal journalist? How do you define it?
A bit of all that. I mean, day job, I'm at the Mail. I write royal biographies. I've done a few. I write royal documentaries, and I do royal commentary when there are state occasions. So, there's always something going on.
You're across the board on this stuff. Just an interesting point. We're going to talk about your new book, Elizabeth II, In Private, in Public. This is the inside story. The Queen never gave an interview, did she? Was there ever, to your knowledge, a kind of, there must have been lots of suggestions. She gave an interview, but never did. Did it ever get close, as far as you know?
She was very friendly with the media. I mean, whenever we went on tours with her, she'd always have a media reception. So you met her, you spoke to her, and I would talk to her particularly if we were doing a documentary about her.
Yes.
In those sort of off-camera moments, she'd sort of want to chat about how things were going, and depending on where she was, I always found she was particularly chatty in her happy places. So, for example, taking carrots to the horses in the mews at Windsor, or looking around the garden at Balmoral. But she never actually did a formal sit-down like you and I are now, because I think she thought that was not what monarchs do. And I think it was advice that stood her in quite good stead. Really.
It did really, didn't it? Because there was something enigmatic but equally accessible about the Queen, and it's even people who aren't naturally royalists will always say, "But I liked the Queen."
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean it changed for the next generation. So Prince Charles, when he was a prince, he did many interviews. I mean, I did several with him myself. In fact, I made a programme with him for his 60th birthday. But that was moving with the times. I think that was entirely correct. But it is interesting that since he's become king, he hasn't done the sort of interviews he used to do. He's made appearances on programmes to sort of promote. He did his own programme called Finding Harmony recently. That was really a look at his sort of core beliefs. But in terms of a Q&A, what are you going to do about this? What do you think about that? That's off limits now for a constitutional monarch.
One of the reasons, I mean, there's lots in your new book. I mean, in private, in public, how does that distinguish itself one from the other?
Well, they were very different. I mean, public Queen was inscrutable, reserved, dutiful, all those things we sort of expected of her. More as she grew older, and particularly in the later stages of her life, actually much smilier. In the early years, people used to say, "Why didn't she smile more?" She just became more radiant, if you like, in later life. But in private, you definitely got a very different sort of person. Someone who could be quite sharp, who was quite witty at times, who had her sort of had her values and was utterly authentic. She didn't do platitudes, so she could be quite direct. She wouldn't. Once presented with a speech which began, "I'm very glad to be back in Birmingham." She crossed out the word "very." She said it's no disrespect to Birmingham, but it would be inauthentic. It would be insincere to overdo it. So you get that sort of side of it.
Yeah, it's a fair point. You wouldn't say that as a humour, would you? "I'm very glad to be in Canterbury," so I'm glad to be in Canterbury.
Yeah, I mean, she was incredibly pragmatic. I mean, people always think that the monarchy is run on very strict traditions and protocol and etiquette and all that stuff, and then there are ways of doing things, but whenever there was a situation that needed a bit of flexibility, she would always go for the sort of the more sensible common sense option rather than standing on ceremony for its own sake. And I just found people who knew her, who worked with her, who were normally very discreet, but they and I have written about her before, but they were happy to come forward and talk about her, and that went right the way up to Donald Trump.
But what was that like when she was the Queen, to get information about the Queen, stuff you needed while being respectful? I would imagine if the palace thought you were, if it was just tittle-tattle, you might go to the bottom of the list. And of course, as we all know as journalists, there is a pecking order in every institution as to who they like to talk to and who they don't. And you can move around on those lists.
You can.
One day you can be very popular. You get the first phone call. Another day they won't answer your call.
I've always found in dealing with the palace that the main thing is as long as you're fair. So if you say, "I'm going to do this," and even if you say, and it's not going to be very, it's going to be critical for whatever reason. As long as you are fair and you do what you say you're going to do, what they don't like is surprises or shocks. Someone who comes in is all smiley and nice, and then they sort of switch on the telly and it's a hatchet job. They don't like that. I mean, there'll be things in this book that they're not particularly keen on. That's happened in previous books. But I mean, overall, the broad picture, I just hope is a fair one, and there is plenty of new stuff to say about her.
Well, I was going to say, and a lot of it becomes very relevant for other reasons, and that is what some people have called the Queen's blind spot, which was her, if you like, her favourite son, Andrew.
Well, as I look at in the book, there is this common sort of parlance. People say he was her favourite, and it wasn't quite like that, as I discovered talking to people very close to her. It wasn't so much she was a favourite; he was the one she was really worried about. It wasn't so much favouritism as concern. She could see he was vulnerable. He was a pretty lost soul. He came out of the Navy in 2001. She and her staff tried to get the Navy to keep him on in some capacity, and they'd finally run out of road and said, "Look, there really is nothing for him to do." And that is when the Tony Blair government in 2001 nudged by a certain Peter Mandelson, said, let's make him a trade envoy. And that's when I think really the sort of trouble started, and he was given a pretty long leash and would go off on these fairly dubious trade missions, and people were reluctant to sort of rein him in and tell him what to do, because I think people thought that he's the Queen's son, and
Did she feel sorry for her own son?
I think she did feel sorry for him at times. Yeah, I mean, I think she was exasperated by some of his behaviour. And there was some pretty appalling behaviour along the way, and people would sometimes try and shield it from her, feeling that we don't want to upset the Queen, we better not tell her what he's just done. She would always find out. I mean, she was very, very astute. She knew exactly what was going on around the place, and she was not blind to his faults. But at the same time, I think she always had a strong degree of sympathy with what Prince Harry has called the spare, the next one down, the one who's not going to inherit, because her father was a spare, her sister Margaret was a spare, Andrew was a spare, Harry was a spare, and she could see that for the eldest, the heir, you get everything runs on very straight lines. For number two children, it's a very different picture.
Yeah, but in terms of the prince, the stuff we then. And most recently have got to know more about in terms of Andrew, as he's now called. I mean, would she have been aware of all of that and what he was up to, who he was staying with, who he was mixing with?
No. I mean, she'd know broadly that, particularly after the Epstein thing kind of blew up into the open in 2010, 2011, and there were those pictures of him, she would have known that he'd been meeting this bloke, and she would have taken at face value his as he told the nation, as he said on Newsnight, that's it, I had nothing more to do with him. I think that's the level of what she...
So he lied to his own mother?
Yeah, he lied to everybody. That's why when that moment came earlier this year, when actually the tail end of last year, when the Mail on Sunday revealed that the relationship with Epstein had continued, that's why the King was so angry and went far further than anybody expected. Took away not just his titles but his honours, and kicked him out of his house. I mean, it was full degradation. No British prince has had prince taken away from him since a traitor in the First World War. That's the level of punishment that was meted out to Andrew. So he really is in internal exile.
Will those two be talking?
Probably through intermediaries. I mean, other members of the family are keeping an eye on Andrew, because I mean he's in a very dark place, and I mean he's got nothing to look forward to. He's just hit retirement age, 66, and life is looking entirely. I mean, there's just nothing for him to do. So
he can't go anywhere, can he?
Well, I think he probably at the back of his mind was thinking about maybe going abroad and to the Middle East, but obviously that's not a destination that's on the cards at the moment. But it wouldn't surprise me in due course if he did go and live abroad, because life for him in Britain, unless there's some very demonstrable change to the Epstein story, I think any prospect of public life here for him is finished.
She went through quite a lot, the Queen, didn't she? I mean, I'm thinking of the Annus Horribilis and all of that, and the death of Diana. Prior to that, the leaking of phone calls between Charles and Camilla, which were not something you'd want to even repeat right now on national radio, because they were a bit odd. But she was very protective, discreet. Was she protecting the brand? What was she doing, the Queen?
She was pretty unshockable. Her first duty always was to the institution, to the monarchy. But don't forget, she'd grown up around two major existential threats to the monarchy. Firstly, the abdication of 1936, which propelled her father reluctantly to the throne, and that was a huge shock for the family. And within 3 years, they're at war. And the start of the war, things are looking really very bad indeed. And still fresh in everyone's mind is what happened to their cousins, the Romanovs in Russia, just 20 odd years before. So at the outbreak of war, there was a serious risk of they might be kidnapped, they might be shot, killed, invaded, whatever. So having gone through all that, I think it gave her a very solid grounding for life. And there were plenty of other glitches. I mean, right at the start of her reign, 4 years in 1956, There was the Suez Crisis, when Britain was humiliated internationally. America was threatening to devalue the pound and was completely at loggerheads with London. And what did Britain do? It sent the Queen on a state visit to America to soothe everything, to rebuild bridges, and it worked.
And it worked. Did the Queen like Meghan Markle?
I think she, over time, got more frustrated, shall we say, with Meghan's willingness to join in with the.
But she'd been through the commoner route before.
Yeah. No,
there's various types of commoner. I mean, when you look at, I don't know, Fergie or whatever. These Diana, these people came from good stock. Meghan was an American actress, which is fine, but there's nothing wrong with being an American actress. There's thousands of them. But into the royal family, that was a whole different ballgame. I mean, what would her reaction have been when Harry said, "Meet my new girlfriend"?
I think, to start with, the reaction was very positive. People thought, above all, the main thing was, look, Harry's happy. Everybody wanted Harry to be happy. That little boy who'd walked behind his mother's coffin. The Queen did. Harry talked about having a special relationship with her, and I think that's true. She was incredibly fond of him, and he did have a sort of cheeky capacity to sort of get away with things that other people wouldn't. And so when he's found this girl, he's fallen in love. It's great. Everyone wanted to make it work, and as I say in the book, I mean, the Queen went out of her way to not just sort of to make sure she sort of understood the way things worked. Meghan was sort of invited to things before the wedding. Normally you had to marry before you were invited to join royal house parties. That rule was set aside for Harry and Meghan. The Queen sort of stepped aside from some of her long-standing patronages to give them to Meghan, like the Association of Commonwealth Universities. They thought, well, that's a really good platform for Meghan to speak, without being political, to have a sort of platform. So they really did go, I think, the extra mile to make that work. And then suddenly they leave, and then they pop up on American TV saying no one helped us, the family's racist, all that stuff. I think it was incredibly wounding.
Would that have angered the Queen?
She didn't really go in for anger. It would have, I mean, dismayed her and made her unhappy beyond measure. Yeah.
So she would have thought, this is somebody we invited into the family, not completely against convention, but to a degree. And here she was. We welcomed her. I mean, I remember the reaction at the time. This is the new face of the royal family. This is fantastic. Here's this great-looking couple. Everything's going to be great. And then suddenly it went pear-shaped, and we can argue forever what the reasons were. So she would have felt disappointment.
Oh yeah, huge disappointment, because they didn't really give it a chance. And she had, as I said, she hadn't just said, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, she had actively tried to make things easier and better for the couple. She gave. She encouraged one of her senior aides to go and become their private secretary, one of the most trusted and really top-class private secretaries who'd worked for the Queen, went to work for Harry and Meghan, and everything was I think being done. I mean, obviously the palace made mistakes when I think a crucial mistake came when. At the start, Harry's office and William's office, they were all together. They were all part of the sort of, people talked about the Fab Four. But very soon afterwards, the bean counters sort of got involved, and it was like, well, William's going to move his office to there. Harry, you go and sort yourself out. And William's going to get everything. He's going to be king. He's the top dog. And I think that's when the sort of the rift really sort of opened up. But it's just terribly sad. It didn't need to happen. And when you look back to that engagement interview they gave in at the end of 2017, and all they talk about how they were going to do all this stuff in the Commonwealth, and the Queen found that incredibly encouraging. And then when Meghan, on her wedding day, her veil had the flowers of every nation in the Commonwealth embroidered into it, and the Queen thought, this is wonderful. William can take on the sort of heavy lifting as monarch, and Harry and Meghan can do great things in the Commonwealth, which of course was her life's work. And for it all then to fall apart in the space in less than 2 years was just terribly disappointing.
Just briefly, if we can, Robert, we are slightly short of time. What about other members of the family? I'm thinking George, Louis, Charlotte. She had certainly big hopes for William's children.
Yeah, and that remains. I think William, as I've discovered, he obviously takes very seriously his own role as a future king. He takes equally seriously his role as the father of a future king, and they are a very diligent couple when it comes to making sure that the whole prospect of royalty, a monarchy, the life ahead is not scary. They want the children to enjoy it.
Finally, then, I mean, you've known this family from your perspective for a long, long time. Was there any big revelation that when you were researching into this book? Because you were obviously hoping for stuff you didn't already know, because you're pretty encyclopedic in this. If you went on Mastermind, this is absolutely your subject.
My children said, Dad, not another book on the Queen.
Indeed. Was there some revelation that really shocked you when you were looking into this?
Yes. I mean, overall, it was the extent to which in her later life, the Queen's authority was completely undimmed. You know, as she got weaker, as she disappeared, her engagements were very few and far between and very short in the last couple of years of her life. And yet, you look behind the scenes, you talk to people behind the scenes, there was never any question that she should stand back, and she was determined to do her duty right to the end, as I discovered she did. And also, she continued to be endlessly fascinating to world leaders. Yes. And one of the most extraordinary things in the course of doing this was 3.5 months ago, spending a weekend at Mar-a-Lago talking to a certain Donald J. Trump about his experiences of it. Now, I'd never have got through the door of that place if it wasn't writing a book about her, but he wanted to talk about her. And that was the reaction. He was, he was slightly appalled at the start because I met him at his golf club and he discovered I didn't play golf, so he didn't get off on quite a good start. Not a good start, but as soon as I said, well, I'm here to talk to you about the Queen, he said, she was unbelievable, and off we went. And he had very, very fond memories, and that's why I think the state visit coming up in a couple of weeks, that's why I think it'll go fine.
Indeed. Robert, good to see you, sir. Thank you. Robert Hartman. The book is out now, Elizabeth II in Private, in Public, The Inside Story. This is Talk.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned, and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram, and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning, and unfortunately, conflict. This is Talk War, and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just before we talk to Julia, a quick reminder, summer is on the way. No better way of spending a sunny afternoon than at Wimbledon. We're giving you a chance to be there. We've got two VIP tickets, centre court for Monday, the 6th of July. You could be there right in the heart of the action with official Wimbledon debenture seats and enjoy exclusive access to the debenture lounge all day long. I know